calling to order the Joint Committee on Ways and Means and Labor and Technology. So this morning, we're going to hear from Department of Human Resources Development, who will present their supplemental budget requests. Good morning.
Good morning. Aloha and Happy New Year, Chairs Dela Cruz and Elefante, Vice Chairs Moriwaki, Lamasau, and members of the committees. My name is Brenna Hashimoto, and I'm the Director of the Department of Human Resources Development. Before I proceed with our budget presentation, I'd like to introduce the members of the DHERD team that are here with me today. Can I call you? Please raise your hand. First of all, I'd like to introduce our Deputy Director, Brian Ferruggio. Also here with me today is Travis Palmyra, our newly appointed Labor Relations Division Administrator, Jennifer Mori-Kilby from our Claims Division, Raynell Yee from Employee Relations, Signy Nakamura Dereza, our EEO Officer, Patty Taketa, our Lead Recruiter, Mark Togashi, our Administrative Services Officer, Joy Inouye, Compensation Manager, Patty McDonald, our Training Manager, Malia De Leon, our Classification Branch Chief, Pritham Parumalapalli is our Personnel Transactions Manager, and Aaron Jerome Connor Jerome, got that mixed up, my Executive Assistant and the author of our annual vacancy report. And also from our benefits section is Fanny Takahata. Okay, before I talk about our budget requests, if I may, I'd just like to give you take a few moments to provide an update on our department's accomplishments over the past year. I'll be brief. First of all, I'd like to talk about our annual vacancy report, which was submitted to the legislature at the end of December. The takeaways from that report are essentially that we've added 300 more civil service employees over the last fiscal year, which means we were not only able to replace the 1,169 employees who either retired or resigned from state service, but we were able to add an additional 297. And if not for the additional 485 new positions that were authorized by the legislature, our vacancy rate overall would have dropped from 24% to 22%. Unfortunately, when we added in the new positions, we basically remained flat at 24%. The fact is that we're not losing ground. The fact that we're not losing ground can be attributed to several things, including our recruitment staff, the ARBA project recruitment team, our marketing and outreach efforts, and the efforts of many departments to make recruitment a top priority. In FY25, we saw more interest in state jobs than we've seen in the last 5 years. Our staffing team received over 41,500 applications, including over 8,000 applications submitted in response to Governor Green's Executive Order 2502, which was launched as Operation Hire Hawaii in February 2025. This past year, we also began accepting applications from soon-to-be college graduates by allowing them to apply for civil service jobs up to 3 months prior to graduation. Most importantly, our staffing team has made tremendous progress ensuring that recruitments are posted timely, and we're nearly caught up on the backlog of screening. These positive gains are a direct result of the additional resources provided to DHERD to promote the state as an employer of choice and positions that enable us to screen applications faster. And for that, we are enormously grateful. In terms of our own vacancy rate, 3 years ago, when I addressed your committees, I noted that DHERD had 90 FTE, but only 60 positions, meaning we had a vacancy rate of about 30%. Today, we have a workforce of 96. I checked this morning. So we went from 60 to 96 in the past 3 years, and our vacancy rate is closer to about 12%.
But still only 20. So you went up 30%.
Yes.
Staffing.
Yes. From 60 to 96.
But we're flat at overall vacancies statewide.
That's
right. So you went up 30% and we're still flat at, okay.
Well, we're small. We have 102 FTE. So we're a small drop in the big bucket.
No, but just to put it in perspective, because you can't be celebrating the inches at statewide when you've grown 30%.
Okay. And we still have some staffing challenges, which we're continuing to actively recruit all of our vacancies. And finally, last year, the legislature appropriated $1.75 million for DHERD to hire a consultant to work with us on reviewing the entire structure of civil service, the civil service system, including classification, compensation, minimum qualification requirements, job titles, and technological solutions. Essentially, the works. There's nothing that's not on the table for us to consider to modernize the state's workforce infrastructure. I'm happy to report that we've selected a vendor and we're currently working through the contract to execute a contract. And we owe the legislature a report next month on our progress. Now I'd like to just take a minute to go over our 2 budget requests for this year. The first one is in program ID HRD 102. We are requesting 3 FTE and $306,144 per year to add 3 positions and funds to our staffing division. This is essentially to operationalize the ARPA project team that I've been talking about for the last 3 years. This team are the individuals who do the marketing and the outreach and all of the events that promote state jobs in our community. These are the boots on the ground, the folks who put the events together. They also have done a tremendous job in promoting the state through our advertising on things like the bus, in the malls, at UH sporting events. They've also managed our LinkedIn contract. We get a lot of recruitment, a lot of applications through LinkedIn. They're also working on we just recently signed a contract with NeoGov to use their Attract feature, which is very similar to LinkedIn, but it requires constant engagement with applicants. We can reach out to applicants who have a profile in NeoGov, which is the recruiting software that we use and all other government jurisdictions in the state of Hawaii use. So if somebody is looking for a state job or a government job in the state of Hawaii, we can communicate with them. We can tell them about our jobs, but it's very labor intensive because if somebody reaches out to us, we need to be responsive. We need to be engaging with them.
So why don't you just use your vacancies?
We do not have, we'll talk about our vacancies, but we have just a handful of vacancies and they are needed where those vacancies are. We only have basically the division chief and our staffing division at the moment.
Oh, if you look at table 11, you have enough to cover those 5 positions you're asking for. You asked for those before and we denied them. So those are special project positions using federal funds. And the budget guidelines already say it should not be assumed that the state funding will automatically replace federal funding in situations where federal funding is disrupted or discontinued. So catch it. No, it's 3 positions that are exempt.
Yes, right now we have a project team of 5 positions that do all of the outreach and marketing.
You should go through the process of redescribing and all of that same stuff that we ask other departments to do.
We have.
So you take the vacancies, you do what you have to do, and those people can apply for those new positions, but you're not getting these 3. You're not going to get the next 2 either. You asked them for them before, we denied them, and it shouldn't be assumed just because there's no longer federal funds that you're going to supplant them with general funds.
We recognize that funds are tight, and that's why we pared down our request. So our request last session was for 5
last year.
Yes,
we did not give them to you.
That's right.
So go through the process like every other department and do whatever redescription you have to do with your vacancies if you want, and have those people apply for those positions.
In the vacancies, yep. Question, where are these 3 positions? Oahu only or?
Yes, all of DHERD's operations are out of Oahu. Right. We don't have any positions on the neighbor islands.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Okay, so our next request is for 2 FTE and $217,372 for 2 positions in our personnel transactions office. And again, these are positions that are currently existing. They're exempt. They're ARPA funded. And these positions were established about 3 years ago to help us with essentially working to review our legacy processes and provide recommendations for maximizing the efficiency and effectiveness of our human resources information system. So you can imagine we have all of the records for every state employee and every civil service and exempt job electronically, but whether that data is clean, whether it's accurate, whether it's current, all of that requires eyes on it continuously to make sure that we are monitoring what the departments are putting in and that it's accurate. And also using the software that we pay a lot of money for PeopleSoft. That's our system of record, and making sure that we're using all the functionality that's available to us. And we also envision that moving forward with the Enterprise Financial System, EFS, that we are going to be there are a tremendous amount of resources from DHERD are going to be needed to make sure that our systems talk with EFS and that good data is going into EFS.
Question, Chair?
Mhm.
Just short question. These positions are civil service?
No, they're exempt.
Exempt. They're all exempt.
They're all exempt.
So
They're all federally funded.
So it's faster for you to hire.
Right,
No,
but those
she's
ARPA
not
funds,
getting those. Those are
I-
those are special project positions the previous governor had created during COVID. And so they're used with they're ARPA funds.
right, so they started when I started. So this was in January
But she has all
of
these vacancies.
2023.
So she should go through the same process like every other department so that DHERD can understand what it takes so that they can improve the system to make it faster. So you had over a year to do that. You could have did that last year, but you didn't even start.
Well, we're hopeful that we would get these positions as part of our
I told you that
Great.
last year. Question?
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, so based on the chair's instructions, is the intent long-term, if you were to get funding, to convert this from exempt to civil?
Yes, so the ARPA funds will run out in September. They expire, so we won't have any funds, any
You can use
access
the
to those funds.
vacancies.
We have right now only 5 vacancies on this report that have not been already filled.
Yeah, but I had
And
told
these are-
you this last year.
Right, but we still had funds at that point in time to,
Yeah, but you
we
could have
still have
started the
ARPA
process to transfer, to redescribe some of the vacancies.
All of the vacancies that we filled are needed in the areas where we have them. We only have 102
Okay,
positions.
some of them
total.
have been vacant, like here's one, since 2022.
That position is, it's,
Okay, so
you funded, it's
could
part of our
describe
deferred
that.
comp
There's a
program.
position here.
I cannot. That one is part of, it's assigned specifically
Well,
to
you
the
figure
deferred
it
comp
out. You're
program.
the DHERD director. Okay, so you have other departments jump through hoops. So those very same hoops that you ask everybody else to jump through, you should try jumping through yourself. And then if they need reform, then you can make those changes. Any other questions? Okay, I had a question on contracts. So other than contracts relating to the Office of Modernization, the department has an outstanding balance of about 38,000 to HSI Workplace Compliance Solutions. So despite its end date, what's the reason the balance remains open and the contract after the contract expiration?
I believe that's for our learning management system.
So
And
why is it still open if it was supposed to be ended?
I believe that there were issues with the contractor getting into compliance with the requirements. And so the payment was delayed. So we had to wait for them to be in compliance with our procurement requirements, and then before we could cut them the check.
Okay, so what are those issues?
I believe they've been resolved. Yeah, it's been resolved.
Okay, so then why is it still open?
I believe as of this date, it was not resolved, but since then it has been resolved.
It was recently resolved, Chair.
Okay, so if you guys can send an updated table.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chair, I have a question on your classification study. I know this is not on your edition, the 1.75 million. You selected a vendor. are you going to anticipate you're going to need more money? And will you consult with the different agencies and also with the labor trades as you go through reclassification and study on that?
We're uncertain at this point whether we'll need additional funds. We're hopeful that we'll be able to accomplish all of a review of all of the classes within the amount that has been allocated. If we're unsuccessful, then we will come back to you next session. In terms of consulting, yes, whatever the recommendations, obviously we would need to consult with both HCA and UPW as it may impact their
Okay.
members.
And that would be my hope, that you would consult with all the department agencies.
Yes, so-
and the labor unions on
Yes,
this.
so anytime we're looking at a specific class of work that is, for example, situated in a particular department, like, for example, adult corrections officers, we'll be talking very closely with DCR about how any changes to that class of work may impact them.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
So just to follow on in the classification compensation study, we have had a number of concerns coming from the departments as to high demand, vacant positions. Can you work with the vendors so that these kinds of positions that are really needed by the departments can be put, at the top of your list? Or I don't know how your scope of work is, but to really start looking at these where they're really needed now. And I don't know what the timeline is for this study.
That's a difficult question to answer, simply because part of what civil service requires is that we maintain internal alignment internally within the bargaining unit. So what I anticipate is that we will probably look at specific bargaining units first, so that we can ensure that we're looking and comparing jobs within a particular group. And we'll be in close discussions with the vendor on how to tackle that. There probably will be simultaneous groups looking at different bargaining units at the same time. But in terms of coming back with a recommendation, I believe you'll get the entire recommendation at one time,
And what is the timeline for that?
next session.
So there are a number of departments also with exempt positions, and they seem to be following the same procedure and timing for your classification compensation with civil service positions. How can we expedite that part of it? Because there are a number of departments that have exempt positions that are not in the study.
So exempt positions are not part of our study. So departments establish exempt positions. They determine what job title they want to use. They determine the minimum qualification requirements, and they also determine what they're going to pay, as long as it's consistent with our policy, meaning that we try to ensure fairness across all employees within a particular agency. So it's not something that we're going to be studying in terms of this study.
So they can do it without coming to you for any
Yes.
approvals?
Yes. It's completely delegated. They establish the positions, they fill them. It's completely delegated.
So departments don't have to wait for you if it's exempt.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
They
because
don't come to DHERD at all. The only small portion that may come to DHERD is if they want to exclude a position. So from collective bargaining, then that comes through us because we are required to consult with the union. That's the only piece. So they do the classification, they do the job posting, they do the
And what about-
selection.
even the applications don't come to you. Well,
They do
'cause
not come
what
to
I'm
us.
trying to figure out is because we're trying to fill these shifty positions, and they say DHERD is the problem, right? And we've been waiting since the beginning of this governor's term to fill these positions. And so I think what I told them is just take everything and hire, which I think they're going to do. But they said they were waiting for DHERD for a while, right? These are exempt positions. We gave them, I don't know, 20
They don't come
plus.
to DHERD. I've been hearing that for 3 years as well. And they.
So you're
they're-
totally out of it
We're
then.
totally out of it. Yes.
But so if it does come to you, what is your level of review though? Like how long does it, what is your average time? Are you tracking that data of what's the in time and what is the out time
For
for reviews of positions?
It depends on what the request is. We've started, we actually implemented a system whereby we intake classification requests because we really rely on the departments. If they see that there's a disconnect between the minimum qualification requirements for a job and what they think they need and what they want, then they can come to us and say, hey, this minimum qualification requirement is no longer relevant. We prefer that it say this. We entertain those requests.
And how
And
long?
So they submit us a request to DHERD. We've changed the process. What we were finding before is they would just send a request, but they wouldn't provide sufficient detail as to what they wanted. So we've moved to a SharePoint site, and it kind of walks them through the process. If you're asking for a particular type of request, we need these types of documents. We need your org chart. We need a position description. We need, what your minimum qualification requirements are. So essentially, we're getting what we used to get in piecemeal, which was part of the delay. We're now getting a complete request upfront so we can work on it more efficiently. And so that's been helpful. Oftentimes when we go back and ask questions, we don't get a response right away. I think some of the requests we get months, we wait for a simple response to a question. And yet we get blamed because we're not taking action when we're waiting for the department.
Right,
to
but
provide
are you not
answer.
tracking the time?
Yeah, so we've
So-
started.
So
we've
what
started doing
is
that.
it?
Yes, so
Is it?
it depends. It depends on the nature of the request. If we're starting from scratch and they want a whole new job that we've never had before, that takes longer.
Okay,
Versus
so what
just the
are we
M2
talking?
change. I don't
2
know.
months, 3 months?
A few months. It takes a few months. And part of that, we also have to consult with the other jurisdictions. So we try to maintain parity with the other government jurisdictions.
Well, I think what would be helpful is whatever the metrics are, that's up to you, but we need to see metrics and we need to see a decrease in the metrics, right? And so if you're not tracking it, like I was looking for it, but I don't know, yes, you got, you there's some metrics, but I want to know the
Right.
review time metrics. Because when you go talk to a department and then they blame you if we don't have any metrics to show,
Right.
right? From the
So we
department.
have a new branch chief and she's put into place a tracking. So we are moving
Okay.
forward. We
When-
are going to be
when are we
tracking
going to
it.
get that then?
We are going to be tracking it. I don't know that we don't have any historical data, but moving forward, we intend to track it. So when we get something and then we ask a question, we're going to be logging that. So each request that we get, we can show how long it sat with DHERD versus with the department.
Oh, we have never tracked that before.
We have not, no.
Okay.
So can you provide the committee a list of all the departments that asked for this assistance
Sure.
and the date that they actually asked for it?
Yes, we can
So
tell you the
see, at
pending
least
actions.
from what Senator Hashimoto is asking, some kind of track record to see when the departments ask and how long it takes DHERD to turn it around.
Right. I can tell you that there's probably maybe less than 20 requests total across the entire state of any kind of amendment. So it's not a huge volume.
So we should be quick then. Well, but I think, when you did a previous presentation to us, I think what bothered me a little bit is what you didn't look at the most common positions that should be reclassified and work with those departments to say, hey, do you want to classify? You're taking the position that they got to come to you, right? Versus them being more proactive and being like, hey, you have a lot of vacancies in this category. Do you want to try and reclassify, right?
Fair. I think when we were here last year, I had one person in our classification team and 2 clerical folks. So we were barely treading water. Just in the last few months, our classification team is nearly full. We still have 1 clerical vacancy because we had an individual retire in December, but we are completely staffed up now. So I anticipate that we will be able to be much more responsive to departments when they request.
Okay.
action.
Last point. So I'm looking at your data, right, as of December 1st, 2025, that your operation hire resulted in over 7,700 applications, right? But you only filled 183 positions.
I think we're close to 8,000 applications and 200 hires. We don't record the hires until they actually take place. I know there are a bunch in the pipeline, but it's available to departments who want to use it. There's at any given time, there's about 50 jobs that are posted on the Operation Hire Hawaii.
And do you
link.
think the 200 is a lot versus the 8,000 applications that we're getting?
It's not a lot, but it is, it's available as a tool to departments who want to use it.
But are we not dissecting on why the higher rate is so low?
It's really the departments, they can move as quickly or not as quickly as they want. It provides a framework for them
But
to
that's
use
a
it if they
different-
like to.
No, if you can answer his question. He's not asking you to hypothesize why you think. He's asking, why aren't you tracking it and coming up with an analysis to come up with ways we can improve the system?
I can tell you, for example, I don't know why there's only been 200 hires.
Yeah, so
It's
he's
the
asking you to go
departments.
look at it, analyze it, and come up with data so we can improve the system.
Okay.
I think you're right. It's a tool, but we need to understand, like, if you have a tool and it's not working, like, well, what's the problem with the tool, right?
I think it is working.
Yeah,
what-
200 though out of
You're admitting
8,000.
that the percentage is small.
It is small, but for example, we posted IT specialist as one of the first jobs that went up. And we had only a couple of departments that had positions that were wanting to use Operation Hire Hawaii, but we got like 300 applications in the first couple of weeks. So there was a disconnect. We've gotten smarter about how we're recruiting, but there was a disconnect initially in terms of the volume that we were taking in relation to the number of positions that we were trying to fill. And so we've tried to be a little bit smarter about how we recruit and how many applications we accept for any one vacancy. But it was a learning curve. We had never done it before. We didn't know how many applications we were going to get. We were inundated initially. So we do have a lot of applications, but there weren't necessarily a lot of jobs, departments using them. What we did do is take all of those applications, we screened them, make sure that we had qualified applicants, and then we started referring them to departments that weren't using Operation Hire Hawaii, but also had vacancies, and we're just using the traditional method. We referred them to those agencies as well. So maybe the hires weren't under the Operation Hire Hawaii, but we still did utilize those applications and referred them to other agencies.
Okay, well, I think we really need to take a deeper dive, maybe see what else is there. I think maybe get the conversions up higher. I think the last thing that did alarm me when I was reading through your testimony is there's no mention of any of the movement from Hele'emua of, like, what are you doing with all of these interns, right? We have these state interns and you have no data on if you hired any of them in here.
So Hele'emua is a Department of Labor
No, but
program.
you
and we
should
tried to
have some.
change-
Reflecting and answer
You
the
should have
question.
some statistics of, are you hiring from that pool? Because as the human resources agency, you should kind of know, right? Like, should we not even have this program because we're not hiring, or is it an untapped resource?
There's been challenges getting data on the interns themselves.
But I don't. But if you're hiring them in state government, wouldn't you have that data? You have
Not
checkbox?
not necessarily.
I was a Hele'emua intern check.
Not necessarily. We don't have a box for that in our system, but we have talked internally about how we could try to decipher whether they've become a state employee, and internally we have a plan moving forward on how we're going to figure that out.
Yeah, so can you give us a detailed memo and to describe what those challenges are? Because you can just say it anecdotally, but if you don't have like an outline as to what, we can't fix it.
Sure.
Because if not, it just sounds like you're just saying that. Other questions?
Just one quick question on the lines of Senator De La Cruz. So everything last year when you came here and because you get plenty of guys in a room, yeah. So I don't know if you actually took notes, because he's asking you the same questions and asking you, we're getting the same results, not just with you now, with a lot of the different departments. But again, every single department, if you've been watching, blames you, whether it's true or not. So he asked you last year these questions. So I just no, did you take any notes from last year to to do these things before you come to the hearing today? Because right now you're kind of defensive, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be, but you're being defensive when my colleagues asking you questions instead of coming up with the answers. And if you don't have the answers, just tell my colleagues you don't have the answers, and you can come back to them. Or like Senator De La Cruz said, just write a memo, because it seems like you didn't do nothing from what Senator De La Cruz and the body had asked you last year. So if you did that, can you explain your accomplishments that you had actually do since the last time you had this hearing last year?
I believe that we've had a lot of accomplishments in terms of across the board. All of our divisions are working hard to make the state responsive to the workforce, to provide good benefits to our employees, to be responsive across the board.
The
So
reason why, so
we
some
absolutely take
departments have
note.
600 vacancies. That's the number that we've been hearing. One of them is the worst, is like 600 vacancies. And then they're trying to get more positions, and they're working with you guys to get more employees. But you as dear, whatever, if you guys, I mean, excuse me, if you guys are asking them as a state human resources, aren't you asking them the question that they're asking you if you're tracking? Wait a minute, you're asking for new positions, but you have 600 vacancies. Is anybody actually relaying that back to the departments and saying, before you can ask, why don't we work together to reclassify these positions so that we can probably double them up for the salary that they're talking about that they don't have? Because 600 vacancies and not be able to do anything, then you come to over here to ask for new positions, but then the vacancies are not filled. So is there any way that somebody's tracking the consolidation of these departments and saying, hey, we looked at you guys' stuff. You guys have a lot of vacancies. Why don't we work together and reclassify some of them so that we can kind of, minimize the amount that you guys are asking for, especially when you want new vacancies, new positions, excuse me.
So DHERD is not part of that budget review process. It doesn't come through DHERD. We don't have an opportunity to review their request for new positions. It goes through the Budget and Finance Department and then through the Governor's Office.
You know what? We
But
can
in
give
terms
you a
of-
list of vacancies from all the departments that we get, which you could simply ask for too. And then you can look at which ones they took a long time to hire. You could look at how long there's an 89-day hire. You could analyze the data the same way we do when we look at the vacancy reports. And then you can come up with ways that you can help the departments. Because I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad everyone's working hard. I appreciate their hard work, but the percentage of 24% is still the same. And your department has increased hiring by 30%, but the whole statewide is still at 24.
So each state agency has a departmental human resources officer whose job it is to work with their managers to
So you're
redescribe
saying
their
that, so that
positions.
you're
and
saying you have nothing to do with that.
we don't have any
So-
authority over their HR.
So why not delegate almost everything to the department?
It is delegated to them. Their delegated
Not
responsibility and
everything. It's still
authority.
got to come to you for reclassification. They got to get
It's
to you.
delegated. The only thing that comes to us is new classes of work.
Okay,
and
so
the
if we
bargaining
draft a
department.
bill to legitimize the decentralization of DHERD, you're okay.
It's already decentralized. It's already
Then why
part
do you
of our
need that many
process.
people?
Because we, through our staffing
If
division,
it's
are able
decentralized, why do
to,
you need these 5 new people?
because there are certain things that are centralized.
Okay.
Classification is
You know what,
decentralized.
Brenna? Then don't try to play cute about, oh, it's all decentralized. And then now when I ask you this, oh no, now it's not all decentralized.
Well, there are certain functions that are centralized and certain that are
Then
not.
you should have said that from the
Recruitment and
beginning.
classification are decentralized.
Can you just send us some information on what is centralized, what is decentralized, what you do and what you can help oversee? Because the departments really need help in terms of filling the vacancies. And what role can you play in terms of helping them?
So we've coordinated and participated in over 40 recruitment events over the last year. The recruitment team has the benefit of being able to coordinate
Okay,
this for the
she's not
entire
asking
state.
for a verbal response now, because you're going to give us anecdotes. What she's asking for is a legitimate list of what's centralized and what's decentralized.
Okay. I can do that.
And how can you help departments with their huge vacancies? And what can your centralized function do to help analyze and assist the departments? Because they're all coming in concerned about not being able to fill.
So Department of Health has the highest number of long-term vacancies, and its total vacancy rate remains the same since 2023. Given these stagnant outcomes, how does your department justify its claim that delegated hiring authority has been effective?
So last session, the Department of Health was granted authority at their request to
Yeah,
take on the
Which you
responsibility.
opposed.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did oppose.
Yeah. So
And,
that's
but it
why
was,
I'm unclear when you say, oh, it's centralized, it's not decentralized, but then you oppose when they try to actually get authority to do it.
it's not the delegation itself that I opposed. It was the compensation of being able to pay the same
Okay,
class
then
of work,
that means
different
it's not
rates.
decentralized. You still want to hold on to certain powers and not delegate them to the department.
I believe that consistency requires that we maintain
Okay.
certain controls.
But
Yeah,
you were trying to play cute earlier and say, oh, it's all decentralized. And then now when we try to authorize the departments to do that, you don't want to go with that.
I'm not opposed to delegation. We have many, many forms of
Okay,
delegation
then
that
why
we've
did you
had for a
oppose
long
Department
time.
of Health's bill?
Because there were certain elements of that bill that I
Okay,
found
it just sounds
problematic.
hypocritical. Some of the departments came in and they were still unaware of WikiWiki. So I'm not sure how often your department meets with all the other HR staff within the various departments to at least update them on all the trends, information, programs, so that they're up to date and that they have consistent ways of processing.
We meet with them monthly. I believe if you were speaking with the HR officers, they're aware of WikiWiki, perhaps
One
not.
of them, we had one hearing where they were unaware.
We have a lot of new DHROs as well. So maybe it's time to revisit those
Well, how often
programs
do you meet?
monthly.
So you
I
didn't,
believe now they're
so
actually
you don't
meeting
know who
quarterly.
comes to the meeting that's new?
Oh, I do.
Okay,
Yes.
so why aren't you updating them right away?
We can.
It pops up.
They come and meet with our managers and they get an overview of DHERD and the different programs that are available
well,
for them.
That's not getting through. Question?
Thank you. My question is when there are vacancies and people apply, for those who are not accepted, are they referred to a list of vacancies in other departments?
No, no. When an applicant applies, they apply for a specific class of work.
I understand that, but
so-
when they don't get it, they're still looking for a job. So is that something you guys can consider to let them know that here is a vacancy list where you can go to online to see all the other vacancies?
We, perhaps, but it's very labor intensive reviewing applications and
I'm
screening
not
that.
asking you to review applications. What I'm asking you is when they go to apply for a position and are not accepted, are they not notified that they're not accepted?
Yes, they are
Okay,
notified.
at the same time, can you notify them of a link to other state jobs available? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Dickford.
Do you have a track of how many applicants are being denied, and on basis of which their qualifications is not meeting the requirements? So when they apply, they get denied for whatever reason. Do you have those numbers?
No, I don't have those numbers.
Okay, the reason that I think it'd be good to have those numbers is because we're finding it to be consistent that the process with DHERD is just too difficult. So earlier in your testimony today, you had shared that when there's a request that comes through, you submit the SharePoint, and then they have to watch that, follow it, and then respond back with a checklist of what it is that you folks require. What we're finding to be consistent with all of the departments is that the buck stops with you folks. So there's a bottleneck situation that's happening. And I'm trying to, the process with DHERD is just too difficult. And we're talking about basic contracts assistance positions that are getting paid $38,000. So the reason that I ask, and I think that this data is important to find out just how much applicants are coming through the system and how much are getting denied. And that's really important too. So if you could share that with the committee on how many applicants are actually getting denied.
We can try to gather that data.
Okay, any idea?
I
Maybe
think I would say
1,000?
probably roughly about half of applicants who apply don't meet the minimum qualification requirements.
Okay, that's a lot. 50% is a lot because you have people that are coming through the system daily. And we have thousands of positions that are vacant. So I think with those kinds of numbers, 50%, you guys got to look at your own internal system because you're just making it very hard. You're talking about minimum requirements. These are people without college degrees, people that are just looking for low-level positions. And I would like to see not only that 50% number, but what is the breakdown of those positions and how difficult is the process? Because if we're just asking for a high school equivalent, and these people are getting denied, it comes down to you guys. You guys are making it too difficult. Thank you.
So how many MQs have you looked at changing the bachelor's to something else? Like a CTE or a AA certificate?
I don't believe we've reviewed any recently. As
Been
a,
asking for that for years. Other states have done it.
so
You know, we're stuck at that 24%. The bachelor's is not necessarily necessary for quite a bit of jobs when a CTE or a AA could be very specific in the field that they're applying for.
it could be. We're hopeful that
Yeah, so when are
working
you
with
gonna
the
do
vendor.
something about it? Because
So
the
part of our
24% is
study,
not acceptable, especially since your department has increased by 30.
so part of the classification and compensation study will help us review the minimum qualification requirements and make
And
changes.
so what's your timeline so we can get this going?
So right now, we're working on the contract with the vendor and the
And
whole,
what's your timeline so we can actually do MQs to change to substitute the bachelor's for AA or CTE?
so our whole study is supposed to take place between essentially
I just want
February
to get to the
and
date of when that. could happen.
November, around November.
So by this November,
Yes.
you're going to be able to look at the MQs and change them to CTE certificate or AA.
Where it's appropriate, right?
Chair, the draft recommendations are due in November of this year, and the final report is due approximately February
Yeah,
of
so
next
when are
year.
you going to take action? So that's great that you're going to get the data, but when are you going to do something about it?
Hopefully when we have the data.
So in November.
In November. I don't know if it'll exactly take place in November because we
No,
typically
that's
have
what
to
I'm asking.
consult.
So what's the timeline?
It's too early for me to commit, but hopefully, by early next year. I think the final
why
report
don't
is
you read
during
it?
session.
You
And
can actually give us something that we can count on.
The
Well-
execution, you can get a study.
right,
but
I think the final report is due,
No, that's fine. I want to know. I'm
Recommendations
not
next-
I'm not concerned about when the final report is due. I'm concerned about when you're going to take action
changes.
based on what the final report says. So if it's in November, how many months is it going to take you to actually start going through the process to look at changing bachelor's to other things like AA or CT certificate?
I would anticipate that we'll probably start making those changes sometime next spring, realistically.
Okay, if you can go back and actually come up with a real timeline that we can hold you accountable for.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna recess for Department of Labor. Reconvening. Next, we're going to hear from the Department of Labor, who will present their supplemental budget requests. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair De La Cruz, Vice Chair Moriwaki, and honorable members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to provide you with updates on the department's budget and operations. With the chair's indulgence, may I introduce the members of the department in
Yeah.
attendance?
Well, that's the only report you got because they didn't give you any additions.
No, there's none. I mean,
So you might as well.
we don't have champagne toast. We just have a tap water request. So let me introduce the people that are in attendance. Please wave or stand as I call your name. Bill Kunzman, Deputy Director. Lynn Araki Reagan, she's our Administrative Services Officer. Francis Kagawa, Fiscal Officer. Kim Nguyen, HR Officer. Bennett Yap, IT Manager. Administrator for our Disability Compensation Division, Joanne Bidenhar. Royden Koto is a Program Support Chief for DCD. For our HIASH Administrator, Arthur Roy Taleai. For our UI Administrator, Ann Pereira Eustaquio. And RT Barba, Program Development Officer. For our Wage Standards Division Administrator, Sherry Lee. For our Workforce Development Division Administrator, Maricar Pilotin Predis. Jay Ishibashi, Program Specialist. David Rodriguez, our Legislative Coordinator. Our Workforce Development Council Executive Director, Bennett Misalucha. Our Hawaii Civil Rights Commission Executive Director, Marcus Kawatachi. Our Hawaii Labor Relations Board Chairman, Dwight Takamini. And our Hawaii Retirement Savings Board Executive Director, Alani Kyogi. And our Labor Industrial Relations Appeals Board Chairperson, Damian Elefante. And our Office of Community Services Executive Director, Ray Domingo. As you noted, Chair, we're submitting no new funding requests or emergency appropriations and only 2 minor budget adjustments. Like I mentioned, we're not here with champagne taste. This is very much a tap water request. Our first request is a transfer of $318,000 to effectuate the budgetary transfer of the State Fire Council and State Fire Marshal to the Department of Law Enforcement pursuant to Act 302 of 2025. Second is a transfer of $134,350 from the personal services category to the other current expenses category to pay for current and ongoing expenses for Unemployment Insurance Division program operations. If you would please the Chair, I would like to continue with a few highlights considering our modest budget requests. Our Office of Community Services has worked diligently to facilitate the legislature's award of $49.5 million to 95 Hawaii nonprofits impacted by the federal delays and funding reductions. In partnership with Aloha United Way, OCS is ensuring these funds are deployed quickly and efficiently so that vital community services can continue without interruption. On December 23, a $25 million check was delivered to AUW. The Huakai project, our unemployment modernization project, remains on track and scheduled to go live in March of 2027. Recently, the UI team has been refining the claimant portal through focus groups with claimants and community organizations. These interactive sessions have been highly productive, and the feedback is helping fine-tune the portal. The focus is on plain language and ensuring it's clear, accessible, and easy to understand for all claimants. In October, the Hawaii Retirement Savings Board approved an RFI for an interstate partnership, and in December, evaluated responses from consortiums led by Colorado and Connecticut. To ensure due diligence and make an informed decision, the board has requested additional information from both partnerships, which will be considered at the February board meeting. We remain hopeful that the retirement savings program will be implemented this year. And we've been actively participating in the paid family and medical leave working group chaired by Representative Sayama. We recently procured a consultant with legal and labor law expertise to help develop a request for proposals to use the 750,000 appropriation for an ERISA legal analysis and an actuarial study. Act 251, 2025 formally established both the public sector internship and workforce development program and the private sector on the job training work experience program. We've initiated a pilot project in the ag sector to strengthen the ag workforce and guide expansion into key industries. Our focus is on creating pathways to careers for Hawaii youth that do not rely on traditional pathways like apprenticeship. Thank you again for your continued support of the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. We look forward to working with you on a fiscal year 2026 budget that advances the mission of the department.
Office of Community Services.
Yeah, Ray is here.
Can you come up?
Hi, good morning, Ray. Could you announce your name too?
Ray Domingo, Executive Director, Office of Community Services.
Yes, so I'm looking at table 15 and 16, but especially table 16 with all the lapses for the CIP, the GIA CIP. Is your office doing anything to look at this? I know that we had talked about having more information, but a lot of this is a lot of money left on the table on your CIP requests. Is your office doing anything about that?
So each grantee that we work with have very different situations. Sometimes
But
they
yeah.
do not have all
Oh,
the
I
inform-
think, okay, wait, just to put it in perspective then. A lot of nonprofits who apply for GIA, they may not have the same capacity or know-how of how to work with the state in dealing with CIP. Or even when they even apply for the CIP amount, it might be a guess. They're not sure. So trying to be ahead of it, knowing that this seems to be a trend year after year, is there anything that your department is doing proactively to come up with a seminar, a FYI? This is how, if you want to apply for GIA, CIP, these are things you should know. These are things you should be ready. When you actually get CIP amount, this is how you make sure that you stay on deadline so you can get the funds. So I think that's what she's asking, because if not, we're just going to continue to see nonprofits come in.
Yeah.
They're going to get awarded. You know, they're going to be happy that they got the award. We tell our communities they got the award, and then the monies end up lapsing because of capacity.
So once we figure out, or once the budget is approved, we do communicate already with the grantee that got the grants. So we send them a letter, we let them know what they need to do, and that a specialist is going to be in touch with them. We also refer them to our website, which has a lot of information about what they should be doing and what to expect. So we,
I think, Ray, this is before they actually apply, because once we award them, it's based on this whole, like $1 million in some cases, 120,000, and then you have to lapse it. You only can give them $200, but that's not going to help them. So I think it's the, what we're talking about before, what is the problem of how we can correct it? So when they come in for their request, it's what they need to get the project going.
Yep.
Like if it's planning or it's permitting versus construction, which is, very expensive, and then it's left on the table.
yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll need to do a better job at doing orientation before. So we can do
Before
that.
they apply.
Yes, before they apply with you folks, because they apply in the legislative website. So we can provide the orientation to them, those that are interested in pursuing a grant.
So have
Okay,
you done it this session?
I think what we might have to do though is so that you, Lisa, and Ray do a joint thing, because you guys award and then they.
Right, before that.
Yeah.
So we pick it up after they're awarded.
Before
So
they award.
yeah, so we don't get involved actually in the application process.
Yeah, because it's our application.
Yes, it's your
So that's why I
application.
think maybe it might have to be a joint effort between
Yeah.
us and them.
But we can certainly work together with your group, your staff on the
Session for
orientation.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe in
Before.
November
Yeah,
or early December, we do a seminar or a briefing.
okay.
Yeah, not necessarily a briefing, but like
Information.
yeah, so that we can
And I think we were trying to change the form so that it can be something that we can see clearly when they come in and they can be more prepared when they come in for their
Yes.
grant application. Yeah.
So is there any follow-up as to how, once the grant is received, how it was used and if it was used? Or
The tracking and monitoring.
Yes, we do. They do provide us a quarterly report. Their finances, what they spent it on, as well as information on each of the items that they spent the money on. So we do keep a good track record of making sure that they spent the money appropriately. So we do look at the receipts that they provide before we do a reimbursement.
Thank you.
Yeah. So some of these guys, I mean, I'm not sure, it doesn't say the applicant, but there's a few that say that the grantee actually completed the project under budget. So that's why you guys are lapsing the money.
Yes.
So we might want to have some of them. I don't know who they are. You probably know who they are, but they could be part of the seminar because that would be, I think, positive for us to show nonprofits that are able to really work within the budget and lapse and then work within the timeline. So I would almost assume with the information in front of me that, those are successes.
Yes,
Because-
because they're under budget.
Yeah, and then they actually finished the project.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Chair.
Go ahead. I have a question on contract costs.
Just one follow-up. So the reason why, I guess, as a question, so it's like some of the nonprofits, they've been getting the grants and stuff pretty much every year. But then the people in your office, it's a repetition for some of the organizations, yeah? They buy the same things, they do the same thing every year after year. And then I was getting calls that they certified and sent in the request of the funds, and then they get denied, saying that you guys don't accept that anymore. But 3 years before that, everything was okay. And then we find out there's a new person in the office that never looked at the previous reimbursements. So that's something on the delays too, because most of these ones that I know, they're not asking for big money, it's very small money, but they don't have the capital to get the reimbursements in a timely manner if they keep getting denied. And it's a difficult process. And then the other one is, like, they get the letter, said they have it, you give them the requirements to receive it, but they have not received it due to whatever reason with the department. So a lot of them, that also is the reason why the money lapsed. So is there any data that you guys can help us with in making sure that when they get the letter and they put in a application that they actually get the money, because some of them is big money.
So first of all, Senator, we really try hard to make sure that, the amount that was approved for the grantee, that they're going to achieve that. So we're not in trying to deny anybody. So we try to work with each of the grantees to make sure that they get what they're supposed to get. I need some more specific on the particular situation you're talking about. Is there a particular grantee that might have?
No, maybe this one you guys can offline.
Yeah, we can do that
Yeah,
after.
because then
We can do that after.
I don't know what's proprietary and what's.
Yeah, but just generalization that they get difficult time putting in the paperwork, because it's the same thing they did the previous year and they're getting denied for the same products that they've been buying. Can talk later.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, a question on contract cost, not so much for OCS. Table 14, 2 questions. First on page 26. So the question I have is, how is the department addressing the 1.662 outstanding balance for contracts that have ended?
What are you talking about?
No, in general, there's about 1.6 million that still have to be paid out, even though the contract's ended. That's based on this chart that you guys filled out.
When they say outstanding balance, does it mean that it is going out, or is this just extra money that's gonna lapse back? That's the other question.
Oh, it could be that too. Yeah. So that means you guys, you guys actually completed the contract with less money.
Right. Maybe there needs to be another column on this, what,
No, yeah. You want them to just go back to
Yeah, you can get back to us on that, Director. I have a follow-up question on page 21 on table 14. This is for UI, your modernization project. I know that's a big amount. Could you,
Oh,
I mean, I know you're working through that process, so could you provide sort of minutes, what is it here? 50, I have 58 on the bottom, like the fourth line, third and fourth line to the bottom, right? Is that your overall contract for that in terms of the phases for your modernization?
Hi, good morning. Ann Eustachio, Unemployment Insurance Administrator. So yes, it's a huge project. We have 8 contractors on this
Okay.
project. That 54 is for the vendor who is the main application vendor.
That's one contractor out
That's
of 8.
one out of 8,
Okay.
correct.
And then where you are timeline wise with from-
Making payment.
or just in general of completing your whole overall modernization?
So March,
Halfway through or more than halfway?
little over halfway through. March 2027 is our launch date. It's a 3-year project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Kim.
still, on contracts, Jade? I'm on page 20. So there you have this, AI Kahu Culinary Solutions, EIA Community College. Purpose of this to enhance business growth, improve long-term employmentability, Hawaii people through employment training and existing short-term non-credit training courses. Can you explain what exactly you accomplished with this? And it ended, well, it's ending end of this month. And there's an outstanding balance of 3/4 of it.
Because nobody else.
$1 million.
And now.
Good, Mercar Pilotin Freitas, Administrator of the Workforce Development Division. Senator, that relates to our Employment and Training Fund. So we contract, we do an RFP so that companies can send incumbent worker to training to upgrade their skills, and the state pays for half the tuition of those courses. So that's what's left of the contract, and another RFP has gone out, and we're in the process of contracting with the next set of training providers.
Okay, but the contract ends in a week or so.
Yes, so
And
that's,
so you only spent 300 something $1,000.
yes. So we budget for $1 million so that companies have up to that amount to request for training. And that's what's the utilization rate is. So what's ever left over will go back, revert back to the next year RFP for usage.
So the money, is this a line item, budget amount, or is this just out of your budget, $1 million?
The $1 million is a collection of what employers from the tax fund. So they contribute a percentage to do that program, and that's what we budget when we do the RFP, and that's the maximum amount that the contract is allotted for.
Well, it just, I guess I'm not real familiar on this, but you budget $1 million, you only use 214, and the contract ends this month. So are we just not having enough people? Or are you just budgeting too much? Or, and then the money?
We-
No, because you only used of that,
Yeah.
you use 1/4 of that amount, so.
We do outreach and recruitment for companies to be aware of that. They can take advantage to training their incumbent worker. I guess I'm not sure what why they're not taking advantage, but we do offer them so that the intent really is so that the incumbent worker can
No,
get
I
the skills. Yeah.
understand, but if we're not utilizing it, I'm not saying just go out and spend it, but maybe there's not that great a need, or maybe the businesses are doing it on their own. But are you evaluating this program as to the effectiveness? How many people actually participated? And what did we get out of it?
Yeah.
Because you're talking $1 million, you have $785,000 there, and now you're gonna, I mean, how often have you been rotating this or continuing it on?
Yeah, we do the contract every 2 years, Senator. So we'll get the numbers
Yeah,
to
because
you.
it says, Kahu Culinary Solutions, that we have a culinary program with KCC. So I'm not, and other colleges. So I'm not sure, again, are you folks evaluating these contracts to see the effectiveness of whether or not we should be spending this money, or maybe we need to put it in something else?
Yeah. So those are the training providers that apply, but we'll get the numbers to you. And the report is also part of the department's report on the number of incumbent workers.
Yeah,
that
but are
took
you
advantage.
evaluating it? Are you have a scale of how effective this program is, and is it worthwhile for us to continue or maybe do something different? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Was that state funds, federal funds,
Federal, I
grant?
think it's
This is special funds,
special
Senator.
funds.
So the money goes back to the special fund.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on the next page. The third one, provide job readiness training and job development services for participant receiving training from the University of Hawaii. They're receiving training from the University of Hawaii already. What are we providing there?
Anyone.
Yeah, page 21, third from the top.
Okay, so that is the federal grant, Senator, that we have the eligible training provider list. And so each vulnerable population, the low-income adult, low-income youth, as well as the dislocated worker population, can select from those lists of approved training. And that's the contract that we have for the WIOA program.
Okay, so you have a person that comes, they're already at the university or not?
No, so the process normally is they go to the American Job Center on each island. We have an American Job Center on every island. And if they're meeting the eligibility criteria for the low-income adult population as well as the dislocated worker population, and based on their individual assessment, that is a training that will get them to that career goal, then we pay for the tuition for those. And every island, the cap is different.
Okay, so do you have a record of who went and what happened, and did they go on? Did they get a job or whatever? Do you have that?
We have
Because it seems like a small amount that you're using. You
We
have
have-
outstanding balance of almost half of, little less than half of what you started out with. You have $116,000. That's from a 321,000.
correct.
Okay, so both of these things that I asked, can you guys provide us with a, what happened to these participants? Or is the training working? Is this doing this job, what it's supposed to be doing? Because it seems like we get onto these contracts, we provide these services, but we don't know the outcomes. We don't know if it's effective, if you're not evaluating it. So, and it should be ongoing evaluations and not just after the fact, right? Evaluations. Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, Senator wants a breakdown on the different islands.
Can I go breakdown of the island?
How many participants?
Many participants.
We'll get that to you, Senator.
Any other questions? Okay,
On
not-
travel.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, can we go to travel, table 23? Couple of questions there. On page 47. And I know these are federal funds, but as the Fed starts cutting out funds, I'm not sure if you're going to ask us to replace this, but there's that trip to attend 10 steps to federal resume, updates and transforming to civilian resume training. And there's 1, 2, 3 people attended that last year. What exactly is that? What kind of 10 steps to transforming civilian resume training?
Let me ask Maricard to come up.
Second to the bottom.
Maricar Pilotin Freitas, Workforce Development Division Administrator. So Senator, we operate the Jobs for JVSG, Job for Veteran Service program. It's targeted to help those that were honorably discharged. And so we send those counselors to training to make sure that they're able to serve the veterans satisfactory and get them from military to back to the civilian workforce. So that's what we paid for. In addition, we brought counselors from the neighbor islands to also attend that. So we brought someone from Texas to conduct on-site training for our veterans as well as our case workers.
Okay, and then going further down, there's a lot of to attend training. Where are these? Are these all off-site or? Even on the next page, perform on-site monitoring of WIOA grants. So if it's on-site, what are the costs that's associated with it? Is it mileage? Is it?
That's for, okay, annually, our federal grants must be reviewed on site to evaluate whether or not those expenses are valid. And we do have participants in those programs. So we have staff from Oahu that spends maybe 3 days to monitor those programs that's fairly funded on each island.
Okay, so you don't have people on that island to do it? Everybody comes from Oahu?
Yes,
This is
Senator.
neighbor island travel?
Yes.
Seem kind of low though. Some of the amounts.
Yeah, some is just, we can do it overnight, some takes longer. So there's several monitoring that we do under the federal grant. One is to review the data, and one is to make sure that there's actual participants being served.
Can you do some of this via Zoom?
We have a federal reporting system. So we do a lot of the work before we go, but sometimes it's necessary to do on-site visit to make sure where the participants are placed are, valid. And some of the participants are interviewed on-site.
But there's a number of them that go to the same training, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, I don't know, 20 at one time. So I'm just wondering the numerous amount of people that is doing it.
The training or the monitoring?
Well, both.
Okay, yes.
So yeah, if you can get back to us on that. Thank you.
Mark, I stay there. I have a question with regards to Hele Imua program. Are you folks working with DOE to put some kind of like marketing pieces or materials up at the schools to let the schools know that Hele Imua program is available? Recently, I facilitated a Zoom with your staff and with Waianae High School. They didn't know the program existed, but as soon as they found out, then they're actively recruiting for the program. So in my school, I have 2 high schools and a community college. So if there's any way that you folks could have some printed materials and getting the word out to the school, I know there's a demand there. So if there's any way that I can help you, but right now, do you folks have any marketing strategies?
We
Okay,
work,
there's a there's an not an awkward, but there is an agreement between Department of Labor and DOE. So there's 330 positions right now for Hele Moa. 300 are assigned to DLIR.
Mhm.
The other 30 are assigned to DLIR, but they're almost delegated to DOE. And then what DOE does is they take those positions, the 30 positions, and they turn them into 90 because of the fact that it's not year round. They're able to make 90 internships out of the 30 positions. And so the person that's in charge of it at DOE is Wanell.
yes, Senator.
Yeah, so then I don't know, you can still answer her question, but I think part of that is we also have to ask Wanell.
Yes. So Wanell was part of that meeting that we had with Waianae High School. So they are working collaboratively to make sure that it's cohesive in the outreach to those schools.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to ensure this program works because it is a solution for
Yeah,
my
that's
community.
good.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if there's a way that I can
Yeah,
get
this goes
behind that,
back
let me
to
know.
what we talked about with DHERD, right? So
Yeah.
because if you have a CTE or AA and you get the Hele Imua, then you get the work experience, which means you should be able to get the job. But unless they end up really looking at incorporating Hele Imua, going back to Senator Hashimoto's question, and if they don't look at changing the MQs and getting rid of the bachelors on at least some jobs, how do you really help articulate a pipeline with early college?
Yeah.
Dual credit, Hele Imua, so that the student can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel that they're going to get a job, a state job, and they could get it as soon as they graduate
Yeah.
from high school.
Mm.
But that pipeline is not as concrete as we would like.
Yeah, and I think your staff that was on that call experienced firsthand that this was something that Waianae was excited about. So we want to make sure to keep the momentum on that. Quick question, kind of pivoting a little bit, but not really. With regards to your folks' vacancies, just curious if any of those vacancies are being held up, because if any of your vacancy positions are being held up at DHERD.
No, they're not being held up. I mean, our vacancies, if you remove a lot of the unfunded federal positions, I mean, our vacancy is really just like around 10%. I mean, we're, I think we have a good vacancy rate.
Yeah, some of it, because I noticed on yours, it says pending federal funds.
Yes,
Yeah.
those are unfunded federal positions because it doesn't make, I mean, even if we were to fill it, I mean, where would we?
Well, and
get- yeah.
they could have thousands of vacancies actually, because the internship itself, the internship program, that has about 2,000, right, Ann? 2,000 positions.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So then, but and that was all federally funded. So what we did was we funded 330, and believe DHERD wants those positions, but in the case that the feds ever start funding it again, then they're going to go through Department of Labor, not necessarily DHERD. So long term, it's better to keep it here to leverage federal funds at some point when they start restarting this program again. And any other, go ahead, do you have a question? Okay, adjourn. Okay, calling this informational briefing to order. Next, we're going to hear from Department of Budget and Finance, who will present their supplemental budget request. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Colby. I'm an acting director of finance. It's a pleasure to be here. Chair Dela Cruz, members of the Ways and Means Committee. The Department of Budget and Finance develops the governor's budget and multi-year financial plan and manages the state's finances. BNF is a service agency, which means we do not provide public services directly to residents. Rather, we work with other departments to translate policy into financially sound, executable budget. Our role is to ensure that the state's priorities are affordable, its obligations are met, and its resources are deployed efficiently and transparently. I have been working here for a couple of weeks, and one of the great pleasures is I've come to know that we have a talented management team, and it was very dedicated, and I'd like to present them today.
Yeah, go
With
ahead.
your permission. So to my right, we have Deputy Director Nasir. We have Rod Becker, who is a finance administrator and acting budget administrator. Mark Anderson, who is the administrator for Office of Federal Awards Management, and Tracy Bond, Administrative Services Officer. We also have the heads of our attached agencies. For ERS, we have the Executive Director, Calbert Young. For EUTF, we have the Assistant Administrator, Donna Tanaki, and as the State Public Defender, John Ikanaga.
Why does the ERS director look younger than he did when he was at UH?
So please note that, we have a budget request of $4.3 billion for 2027, 98% of which is fixed costs. And those are non-discretionary expenses like debt service, retirement health system, health fund, things of that nature. That's just a reminder that we are a service agency primarily. Only 2% or 86.8 million is for expenses associated with direct departmental operations. We have very few requests for the supplemental budget, but I want to highlight a couple. So in terms of the fixed cost category, we have a decrease of 150 million in 2026 and 137 million in 2027 for debt service cost payments. We have a decrease of 3 million for fiscal year 27 for general funds for health premium payments. We're requesting an additional 1.8 million in general funds and 320,000 special funds for the Commission on Salaries and Adjustments. And we are requesting 3.5 million in fiscal year 27 for fringe benefits cost requirements needed for the ERS. We are requesting 2 full-time positions. One is 100 business analyst for ERS. And another one is an investment officer for the EUTF. Additionally, we're requesting, and it's important to note, neither of those positions are general funded positions.
Seth, can
Yes.
we go back to table 5 on your reductions, the debt service reductions? Can you explain that? And whether we're not going to feel any impact from those kinds of reductions?
Yeah. So the debt service reductions is we use a formula to calculate our debt service, right? If you look at in Form A on the 3rd page in justification of requests, you can see the formula that we use to calculate our debt service. And so every year we.
Testimony. You're
Sorry.
going to say 4th page.
Sorry.
Sorry,
So if we go to Form A and the first title, right? First page, second page, on the 3rd page, under section 4, justification of request.
So I don't think they have a report.
Oh, they don't have that form. Oh, okay. Then I'll.
Yeah, so the debt service, the savings is due to 2 factors. So one is that we didn't have a bond sale last year, so our bond issuance schedule changed. And then the second is that we changed our assumptions around bond maturities.
So this won't impact how we go forward?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. And so I'll just finish up. We are requesting $43.5 million in general funds for the green fee. That is Act 96 that passed last year. And with that, I'll stop and open it up to questions.
On the green fees, I see that in table 6, in your green fees, you have requests from A funds. And then if you go to your CIP requests, and it notes Act 96, when you go to CIP requests, you have requests there. Is that also green fee, Act 96 C funds?
That's correct. So originally, all of the green fee funds were going to be coming from the general fund. As part of our financial plan, we split that amount. So half is coming from CIP and half of that is coming from the general fund.
But the A funds, I mean, but the Act 96 funds are all general funds. How do you get to C funds?
So we're
Mhm.
splitting it half-half. So for FY 26, we're doing all GO bonds. And the reason for that is that the funds would have lapsed June 30th. So by the time the budget was enacted, there wouldn't have been enough time for the departments to actually spend the general funds for FY 26. And then going forward for 27 and later years, we do split it because we imagine that several of the projects are CIP in nature, and it does give the departments more time to expend those funds.
But how do you pay the C fund?
Yeah.
We would use debt service.
So the
So,
general fund will
yes.
still,
Yeah, so the general funds would still
so that's
pay for
not
the GO
necessarily
bonds.
green fee.
So the way that we're
It's just
open
your CIP
to,
budget.
right, so we're splitting it half CIP and half general
Yeah,
funds
but you
going
just said that
forward.
The GO bond is paid for by the general.
Correct. Yeah,
So
so
that means these are not green fee bonds.
they're not green fee bonds. They're regular GO bonds.
Well, you're just using CIP,
Mhm.
but you're not using Act 9. So Act 90C authorized green fee.
Well, do you have the projects for this?
We do. We do have the list of projects, and we are planning to transmit that to you folks shortly.
And
Okay, how did you guys come up with because you're using 14, you're putting in 14 million for fiscal year 26.
Right, so the three categories or the three buckets that are stipulated in the act were just 33%, 33%, 33%. And then for FY 26, it's the revenue estimates from DOE tax. Then for FY 27, it's half GO and half general funds.
But that's kind of disingenuous though, because it's not really green fee funds that are paying the bonds.
It's not green fee funds that are paying the
Yeah,
bonds.
so why call it that then?
Yeah, so we do intend to use it for green fee projects, but it is paid with GO bonds.
Okay, but the project title says green fee,
Yeah,
so that's not accurate then.
yeah, so those are that's just a placeholder title.
so how are you coordinating this with the departments that may have needs? So you are funding with the GO bonds, the C funds.
Right.
There are projects that they need to have, which happen to be climate related or tourist enhancement related.
Right, so those departments were given instructions to submit their projects, and the Green Fee Advisory Council is reviewing those and separating those into the necessary buckets that are listed here.
So the C fund would come from, would be addressing needs that the departments say they need. And that's not going to.
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. That's not the real process though, because the committee could just add what they want to.
The committee could modify as
That's
needed.
not true.
Yeah, so the departments do submit their requests, and the committee does review the department request, but the
They can
committee
add what
can
they want.
modify.
Yeah, they
Correct.
could add what they want. That's why it's not necessarily, it's,
Yeah, so the committee can modify, and then those requests will be sent to the legislature, and the legislature can ultimately decide, what to fund.
And I think the committee already had done their overview and then they asked the agencies for their requests.
The
So-
agency requests, I can look back at the timing, but the agency requests, I think, were in maybe October.
Yeah.
So I guess those questions go to you too, Seth. How are you looking at the green fees and how are you looking at CIP fund? What projects?
So the CIP is for building, for construction costs, things like that. And the only way that we believe that certain green fee projects will conform to the requirements of CIP funded projects.
So you are reviewing all of the requests.
We will review all the requests, correct?
oh, so you haven't reviewed yet?
No, my understanding, or it goes through a process, right? So it goes through the FCAS, and then they review those projects and they come to us, and we.
So when is that going to happen?
So the Green Fee Advisory Council has reviewed the projects, and they are putting together their curated list. And I do believe the timeline is actually coming up quite quickly, that it'll be transmitted to the legislature.
So you're not reviewing it before it comes.
But why wouldn't it just be put directly in your CIP budget?
All 43.5 million, or Well, we have to review the projects first.
Well, because
Whatever
it's
you
really
think.
risky, right? I mean, you're going to be pulling from CIP funds with the intention that the green fee funds can pay it back, but you folks are facing a lawsuit right now. So what happens if it never comes to fruition? Then we're just negative $43 million?
That's a good question. So, the CIP budget will come from the general fund.
That's
Or
what
no, yeah.
But
All
it's not,
CIP
it's not
budget comes from the general fund.
Yeah, so
right?
all the CIP is not green fee money.
Correct.
Correct.
It will be a portion. Another thing
No,
too.
there's no
Yeah.
portion.
Oh, well,
It's all just general bond.
that's true. And on top of that, with a list that we haven't seen yet, that we're also is supposed to approve, what happens with an infrastructure or CIP project that goes beyond the quotation from contracts once they start, who's gonna continue to pay the balance on all the extras? So it's gonna be interesting when it comes
What-
to this committee again, anyway.
So you don't know the breakdown for the A funds either then?
We don't know the breakdown for the A funds. So those are just placeholders in the BNF budget, but they will, need to go to the appropriate department. That would be spearheading those or being the expenditure agency for those specific projects. But we don't have the breakdown for the
So
A
the
fund.
total amount you think you're gonna collect for green fee is what, 75 million?
I think it's 87 in FY 27.
43.5.
And that does still include the portion generated that is,
You have
under
14.5, 14.5, 14 by 5. That doesn't add up
That-
to 87.
that's for FY 26.
No,
And then
no,
for,
table 6, operating.
oh, sorry. So for
So it's
FY
40
27, it's split between the CIP table and the operating table.
Okay, wait, I just thought you just said that.
So it's 14.5 times 3 and then
Yeah.
plus the same amount in CIP.
There's
So it's 87.
$87 million is appropriated.
No, but the C funds are not coming from the green fee.
Right.
Yeah,
But
so
but we have a placeholder with the C
But I'm
funds for
asking is
that
how
amount.
much does the green, if it's 87 million, that doesn't really jive. The numbers don't look like they match.
So it
You
is,
have 14.5 times 3,
Mhm.
which is all green fee, but then all the geo bond funds are not green fee.
correct.
Yeah, so that doesn't add up to 87.
So we decided to put half of the green fee as geo bonds. And so those total
But-
amounts add up to 87, but
I don't
that
understand.
the general funds aren't
But the
adding
green
up to
fee doesn't pay for the
87.
general, the CIP.
Correct.
So what do you mean you're splitting it? You're not splitting it.
So we
I'm talking
anticipate,
about whatever's generated
Mm.
from green fee, how is that split? Not just because you labeled it that.
Mhm.
You're just taking the cash then, putting it somewhere else.
We're taking the
Mhm.
additional cash
Yep.
and appropriating it to the general fund.
So we're taking the amount that would have gone towards the green fee.
So why are you trying to tell me that, oh, you're splitting it when that's not the truth?
So half of it is geo bonds and half of it is general funds.
Just because it's labeled that, but
Mhm.
that's not because it's generated green fee.
No, yeah. So I
Yeah,
just,
so
I
that's
just
what I'm
meant,
asking. How much are you going to generate from green fee and how is it distributed?
Mhm.
And you're telling me, oh, it's half geo bond, half A.
I see, yeah.
That's not true. That's a lie.
Okay, so 87 million is projected to be generated from the green fee. And then we're putting half of that into the general fund budget. And then we're putting that same dollar amount, even though it's not directly generated from the green fee, we're putting that same dollar amount towards the geo bond budget. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry for
ha-
the misunderstanding.
So let me clarify. So the money generated, which we haven't generated yet,
Mhm.
correct? But when that money comes in, then you're going to replenish what you took out. Is that correct? You're going to pay for the G funds that you took, and the half to pay for the geo bonds.
But there's no special fund for the green fee. Right?
Mhm.
So the way the bill works is the money comes, the Department of Taxation tells us the amount of money that's raised by this amount, which is 0.75%. They report it to the governor's office. We take that appropriations and allocate that to green fee expenses.
Except you're putting it all in a fund and then all you're doing is adding more CIP and saying that that's green fee projects.
That's correct. That's
So
what we're
that's
doing.
not necessarily as transparent.
Okay.
If you're only going to talk about what the green fee generated, then that would only be the operating budget.
So are we limiting our spending to what we generate? for
No, we're
green-
spending more.
Oh, I know, that's why I'm asking, on what basis are we doing that? Because
No, what we're spending on projects is linked to what we generate. However, we're actually splitting the funds. So say the Department of Taxation comes back and says, for $87 million, you guys nailed it. That's what it is, right? Half those funds we're gonna appropriate from the general fund. Half of those, our proposal is to allocate that to the CIP fund. That will actually generate an additional $43.5 million to the general fund. Now, what you're saying is also correct, right? So if the green fee is not financing all of the projects directly associated with the CIP or with the green fee projects.
The general fund is almost supplementing the green fee now, because it's the general fund that pays the
debt
GEO
service.
bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so there's 43.7 or 43.5 extra dollars going into the general fund
Today, though.
today, right?
Exactly, because when you do the
Yeah.
interest,
When you do the
and all that,
interest.
then it's going to be way more expensive.
Well, we can look at that if we're,
Because the debt service,
Yeah, you're not calculating the debt service that's gotta come out to pay.
But we don't know how many are included in that report that's gonna come to us. How many CIPs are going to be in that, all the agencies that have sent their requests. Some are out of the blue kind of stuff, like what you're gonna do with the air, the quality and the sea level rise. I mean, what's the CIP budget going to look like?
well, what I don't get is, so that, let's say the DLNR has a request to the Green Fee Commission, and they also make the request to the governor. How is that coordinated? So then there's the same project that's going through two different processes.
my understanding.
So we have one single process. So there's a form that all of the departments are filling out.
Yeah,
All of
I'm
them
talking
have been
about that as the
directed.
green fee process, but if
Right.
DLNR has the same project going through the regular CIP request process,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
so then the same project could be going through two processes, the green fee process and the regular budget process.
Right.
And then when do you start to reconcile that?
Right. So departments did talk to us about that during the budget prep process, and we directed them to submit all of those eligible projects that could be supported by the green fee through the green fee process. So we did attempt to troubleshoot that with some
Okay,
of
but
the
what if it's a
agencies.
priority project that the Green Fee Committee does not support?
So the
now the department's stuck.
Right,
When
so-
they should have just went to the regular CIP process.
Right. So the departments had to make a choice to go through one or the other process.
Okay, so we don't get to see the list, because right now we can generally see what, when you look at decisions, what the department asked for and what the governor, BNF but we won't be able to see that with the green fee.
We do have a list, and I think that we can share that larger list and that curated list to you folks in the coming weeks. And I do believe that they are wrapping up on that curated list.
My understanding is that the legislature makes the decision on whatever happens with this green fee.
Correct.
Bill or whatever. Is there a bill?
No, we passed the
It's
bill.
it's
Yeah,
all in the
yeah,
budget
that's true.
process.
Yeah, but the legislature makes the final
It's
decision.
through the budget bill.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the modifications would be in the budget bill.
So is that the intent or is that the practice that whatever you folks ask for, whether it's CIP, general funds, that it's going to stay within the amount that we collect for the green fee?
Yes.
And what happens if we collect less and it goes over?
If the estimates aren't correct, then we would have to revise the allotments when we're actually in budget execution.
Okay, so what happens if the CIP commitments or RFPs go out and it's over?
So with the CIP portion, when they submit the request for allotment for CIP, we would check and verify that the projects can still remain intact. Once the contracts are executed, we would be funding those projects and we would be using the general fund to pay the debt service on those.
So that's where we're adding more money than what the bill actually required.
We're not gonna, in order to pay the debt service, has to come out of the green fee as well. So you need to calculate that in.
It should be precise.
But going back.
You guys are mixing monies.
Is that the legislature approves whatever comes out.
No,
of the
that's established.
recommendation.
That's established. They're gonna send us a list
We just don't have.
and it's gonna be part of their budget. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure what your point is because
is,
we get to revise the budget.
oh, okay, that's clear then, because
It's like any other budget.
what I'm hearing is they're already going to proceed to do the RFP and
No,
then.
no, they're not. That's not what they said.
As long as we understand that.
No, they can't spend anything until we pass the budget bill.
Correct.
So you shook your head, yes, that the debt service. So is it, you are going to make sure the debt service from the GO bonds for the
Matches.
fee is going to match?
Yeah.
The debt service would be less than what we would have received in revenues for the CIP portions.
Yeah, but over the years, I mean, you're going to be
Right.
paying that debt service over the years and the CIP is going to be built.
Right.
Why not just do revenue bond for the green fee projects? Then that way it's clear that the revenues from the green fee pay for the green fee projects versus mixing them all up.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
now you're doing a shell game that is hard to track.
Mm-hmm. So a revenue bond program is, potentially something to look at later on, but for FY26, there wouldn't be any type of way to shift it away from geo bonds, just given the lapse dates and,
Then why
that's
start
fine.
everything is
If you
enacted,
end
but
up
going.
with the budget as a revenue bond, then that's what you're gonna have to deal with.
But why start something when we don't even have the money? And like Senator from Waianae said, what if the court goes against us and we don't have these funds? What do you?
So we should be clear about the court ruling, right? The court ruling is affecting the impact on cruise ships, right? Cruise ships is about at like a ballpark, right? About 5% of all TAT revenues, right? But 0.75%, the green fee is 0.75% of all transaction.
Okay, so what you're saying is a small amount, but okay, but where that amount gonna come from? Your pocket? I mean, whether.
be-
Yeah, no, I understand. You make a valid point. There's like, there's several $1 million that we're not, there's legal disputes about,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that also goes for general fund money, right? Because a lot of TAT money, a lot of the cruise ship money is going into the general fund as well.
Yeah, but it's not designated as some kind of fee to be paid for some kind of specific act.
The present cruise ship
Wait, can you
fees
let
are going to
Lorraine
DOT,
finish?
excuse me.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's two things with the cruise ship. Like the cruise ship is like they expanded the
No, I
space in
understand.
which the TAT is levied upon to include cruise ships, right?
What I want to know is if there's a shortfall, where is that money going to come from? Because it is designated, we passed green fee for it to be specifically for those projects and
Mhm.
those- whatever it is that we're going to embark upon. So where is that money going to come from? I think you folks have to give this some really serious thought on how we're going to pay the debt service and where it's going to come from. And then when I look at here and you have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 green tourism projects, climate projects and environmental, a lot of them will overlap, especially the tourism projects. Could be environmental, could also be stewardship projects. So how is that going to be reconciled?
So a lot of those will overlap. In general, we want to support those projects that primarily fit in those buckets. And so when we are
No.
coding and going through it,
The law is you have to.
yeah, but
Anything.
something might be tourism plus climate, but it's largely tourism, or we might code it as tourism so that we know that we're supporting something.
Trails, say they want to improve the trails and put bathrooms, is that tourism or is that environmental stewardship?
Yeah, so you're right that a lot of these are overlapping categories, but we do want to fulfill the intent of the law, which is to prioritize these
Yeah,
three buckets.
But question is, how
Mhm.
do you do it? It's in the implementation. I
Right.
know, you know, it's in the bill, it's the implementation. So
Mhm.
do you folks have that
List of projects.
rules and what you're gonna follow?
Right. So the Green Fee Advisory Council can share kind of the criteria that they put under each category and how they categorized
Yeah,
each
but
of
you-
those
it's up
projects.
to them to decide what category. Shouldn't that be in some kind of a document that's saying, you're gonna categorize this as this, you're gonna categorize, instead of they're gonna willy-nilly put it wherever they want, and you're dealing with a number of people, right? The vote could be 4 or 5 or whatever, not of people on this advisory committee when they decide what they're gonna do.
Right. So we do have the categories defined in our budget prep process, and we can share that with you, the broad categories. But even with those broad definitions, there was, there's still going to be
That's why there
debate and
needs to be
dialogue.
some rules or whatever
Mhm.
to make it standardized.
Right. So we can share what we've done to standardize the process, which is included in the directions and instructions that were given out to the departments that defined each of those buckets. But there will need to be some kind of, more discussion with the Green Fee Advisory
If you
Council
guys
on how
have
they
monitor
further define
that-
those.
The event that it's not, they don't follow it,
Yes. So when they request the allotment, that's when we would monitor it.
kind of late.
Senator Lee.
Thanks. I'm not sure if this was covered before I stepped in, so if it was, please let me know and I'll follow up with the chair of the committee. But as far as timing goes for, I think what Senator Kim was referring to, getting us the actual list of like the, in the weeds projects and all of that. I think we have an opportunity. Well, we're going to be facing already tight deadlines with hearing, 1,500 or so bills that the community across the state has proposed, having to vet those. Probably, I imagine, will have to be some sort of considerable time put into vetting the various projects because the Green Fee Committee has seen them, right? The executive branch has seen them. We have yet to, in most cases. Are you planning to, well, first of all, when is that going to be available? And then secondly, what other information can be provided from those projects that are both on the executive branch side proposed by a particular department or for those that were proposed by the community? And which organization, or will it be a department that is coming in to sort of explain the justification for whatever that might be that we have no other visibility on?
So the timeline, I don't want to mention a specific date, but the last I had checked, it is in the coming weeks where you folks will get that list from the Green Fee Advisory Council. And in terms of who would be representing those projects, all of the projects do have to be appropriated to a state agency, but many of those agencies may be working in partnership with other groups.
So the agency that would be showing up to testify.
So that means it's a grant?
No, it's not a grant. So it's
They work-
appropriations. They can go through procurements or different contract purchase of services, et cetera, to work with community groups.
Why wouldn't they just follow the same process?
As the GIA?
No, the
Or-
regular process for procurement.
Oh, yeah, they are following that same process.
Well,
And that's the
state would pay
expectation.
For the project, why are we working
Right.
with another? You said that there's another group that they're gonna work for.
No, I was just, sorry, I was just saying that there may be community groups involved ultimately in the implementation and execution of these projects. But all of the monies have to be appropriated to the state agencies.
Okay, so we're only funding state projects.
Correct.
Well, if you take a look at your Green Fee website, though, it does say community can apply, but then it's supposed to be assigned to a state agency. But then it confuses me because if you're not doing the 42F process, how do you pick that one entity that applied in the first place if you have to do an RFP?
Mm-hmm.
So which is it, right? Is it a 40, is it a grant or do you have
It's-
someone in mind if you applied, right? And then if you applied, then you're supposed to go through the Green Fee process. And if they recommend you, I'm just not following here.
Right. So it does all of the funds do need to be appropriated to state agencies, and the state agencies can work through the procurement process with different
But then
community
how
groups
does that work
apply.
if you applied in the beginning to get that funding though, right? It's not like this, I think when on your website, it says people can apply for the Green Fee if you have a project, right? And so it's not the state agency wanting the project, it's the community wanting the project.
Right.
And then they're gonna go have to get RFP'd because even though they applied for the project.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I would need to follow up on that and see what the language is on the website. But yeah, you're right.
Is
That
that what
it's
the process was, though? They made a call out to the
Mhm.
community for projects, right?
Mhm.
It was, maybe some state agencies did give, some proposals,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to understand what is the true process here, because the details do matter,
Mhm.
right?
The details do matter, and there could be instances where there's one specific group that does one specific thing, and they propose that as something that the state should take on. But ultimately, a state agency does need to be the expending agency for the project and does need to follow the, all the rules and procedures to contract out those state funds.
So did they apply as individual nonprofits, or did they apply as, we want, I know, trails, more trails? That's a little bit different in the two cases. So how are you folks processing? What is your procedure?
Well, are you trying to get around the 42F by just having the department just contract the nonprofit then?
The state agencies can contract, and many state agencies do contract to nonprofits already. In terms of the specific procedures that the Green Fee Advisory Council used, I'd have to check with them. I wouldn't have the
But still, it
details.
sounds like you're trying to get around the 42F process by saying, okay, instead of just giving you a grant, we're going to contract you.
The contracting option is available to the state departments to use. The 42F process is also another process, by which we can use state monies for private
Yeah, but
purposes.
you should still do an RFP. Why would you do
Right.
direct contract?
So there is an RFP for those contracts. So it depends on,
So what-
very.
How does that work with the nonprofit that's applying? So that means they would apply, it goes to the department, there's going to be an RFP, and then they might not get it.
That could be possible. That could be possible.
So we're going to string people along.
Well, it really depends on the needs and the projects that are appropriated to the state and to the state departments and how they execute those. But to get the details of kind of where you folks are, kind of trying to understand the details between these discrepancies, I would need to consult with the Green Fee Advisory Council and get back to you.
Well, because you're telling departments to choose either one or the other. They have to apply for the green fee or they have to go the traditional CIP route. So if they apply for the green fee, they don't get it, then they're stuck, then they're at a loss, then they have to wait a whole nother year. So when are these timelines as far as who is getting, when do the awards come out? How would they know? And what kind of assurance are you giving them that they have a good chance, they don't have a chance, because these are organizations that are hoping on these funds?
In general, I think some of the department's approach was to, split it and give some, propose some projects through the regular budget process and then propose some through the green fee. In terms of if they don't get the
equally distributed?
No, I wouldn't say equally. It depends. So the major departments that were inquiring were DLNR, Department of Ag, Department of Defense. So they had the option to choose either funding stream to pursue. And, we would look at and talk to the departments at the next budget cycle to see if there's projects that they would want to request through the regular budget process that wouldn't have made it through the green fee.
So
But
when
the
are you
timing is at the
planning on
time.
awarding? As example, everything on your list, it goes through. When would these departments, or organizations get the notice that they got the funds?
It would be after session, so it would be in, May at the earliest.
Well, that's if it makes it through our budget process.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still some confusion,
And it's so risky.
concern about the geo bond component. I mean, that's why I had asked during the Senate retreat, the majority retreat, about is cash going to pay for those CIP projects? Because there should be a direct nexus instead of commingling funds.
Well, and I think you got to update your website because it does say, can green fee funds be bonded? Currently, Act 96 does not enable green fee funds to be bonded. Just FYI.
Yeah, so that means that's my point. It's like they're labeling it green fee, but that's not any green fee money that's using for those bonds.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So why would you do that though? Why would you be misleading like that?
So this is, our proposal is to have all of the FY26 funds geo. And that was really, that was easier to make because that was.
Is the law.
Right. So that bonded terminology on the website, I think that's referencing more green fee bonds. But the decision for FY26 was primarily driven by the lapse date. So projects wouldn't have time to execute if they were given operating funds. So the CIP funds were used to, to allow the lapse date to extend a little bit past the fiscal year. And then for FY27 going forward, the decision was half GO and half general funds, because we do think that several of
Then
these
you have to amend the
projects.
law.
Okay, we'll look into that. We did talk to the Attorney General and we did, clear kind of this proposal with them that half of the projects could be funded with GEO bonds, but we can definitely look into
Yeah,
that.
of course they can be funded by GeoBond, but it's not green fee paying for the GeoBond.
Right.
Yeah, so then I don't understand how you're trying to make the case that it's green fee projects paid by green fee. That's not the case.
Right. Yeah, I understand your point, Chair.
Yeah, so that's why it's misleading.
You know,
having
this is the first year of a program. You guys bring up a lot of really important points about some lack of clarity, different aspects. So our proposal is we need to really take this seriously and develop a set of protocols and a set of standards that everybody can clearly understand and transmit to the public, to the applying agencies as well, and applying entities, I should say, and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yes, but it's not only the policy. We'll have to look at all of the projects. And it seems like we're mixing CIPs with other projects that the community and the agencies are asking for.
Yeah, so I guess going back to the act, the AG actually said you could use GEO bonds for green free projects.
Correct. So we talked to our deputy AG, Randall.
Okay.
And it was also discussed that,
But
it is the legislature's prerogative to change and amend and,
no, but that's true
propose.
that you can use bonds for green fee projects, but it's paid for out of the general fund,
Right,
not necessarily green fee fees.
right.
What we're trying to find out is where is the direct nexus from the funds generated for green fee to pay for the green fee bonded projects.
Mhm.
What don't you get?
Well, yeah, we'll have to follow up with you on that.
Yeah. It says the governor shall request in the budget or the supplemental budget submitted to the legislature pursuant to 37-71 or 37-72 that an amount of general funds that approximates the additional revenue generated by any increase to the TAT pursuant to section 237-237D-2. So it doesn't say GEO bond funds, it says general funds.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up with you on that and see if we need to modify anything.
Okay, but it's in the law, it says general funds.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not clear on the CIP table with if it says green fee when the law says that it's supposed to be cash.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Sure. So getting back to that, so when this whole green fee thing that we had voted for, going forward, a lot of community guys is buying into it because exactly what Senator had just said, that they're thinking that they're going to be applying and getting the funding, and then now you're saying that it's not going to be coming out of green fee, it might be GEO bonds or general fund. I'll tell you right now, the community not going to buy into that because they're buying the fact that we're raising up the tax for the tourists so that they can go into the green fee to get their projects funding. And what I'm hearing too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I heard the projects that he's going to prioritize is going to be to climate change and anything to do with the environment. So people are not really seeing the generalization that's on your website. So the website is really misleading because our community, especially my constituents who's caring about the environment, they're not going to buy into the fact if we're going to use general funds or other money besides the green fee money. They want to use the green fee money because that's what was told us to when we had passed a bill that was gonna be for climate change and all of these kinds of things, but now we're hearing that we get like, I don't know how much pots of money. This is to the taxpayers that we gotta answer to. And to tell you the truth, I was watching them on top of the Zoom, whatever, I confused. So how am I gonna relate this back to my community when we don't even know where the money coming from? Well, you might get it, or you might not get it. It might be general funds, or it might be green fee funds. Which is it? Because the department is already confused coming here with the biennium budget. How more confused you gonna make them when they come in over here legislatively for ask for funding? It's very confusing, and if Senator De La Cruz and Hashimoto is confused, then guarantee you, I'm out of it. You know what I mean? Because it's something that you guys got to really think, because not me, I will tell you right now, I wasn't supportive of that, but my community told me they want it because it is for the environment. So because my community want it, I support it. But you guys saying that it might not come out of the green fee money. So what am I gonna tell the community that's looking for environmental money, that they're looking on your website, they're all happy that they're gonna get green fee money? And then now you telling this on Zoom that possibly not gonna be the case. So I need to know, because I gotta still answer to my community who's very involved with the environment, beach cleanups, community cleanups. They need to know if they're gonna be able to go out there and get these green fee grants or whatever you're calling it now. That's the confused. So I don't know how we're gonna translate that, maybe to the chair, and then maybe we can find out. So there's no confusion, please.
So the CIP is gonna be listed in the budget bill
Correct.
Correct.
as these general amounts or the specific projects.
As these general amounts.
So when do we get the specific projects?
It's in the coming weeks where you folks will get the specific projects. Yeah, but
What does that mean though? Because what I'm afraid of is, it's not gonna get in time so that the House would have adequate time to review it before we get it, and then they may not make the amendment, and then now it's entirely up to the Senate.
Right, understood.
And so then that's difficult when you go into conference, when you can't even start to negotiate the details of all the specific projects because they didn't have even enough time to review them.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'll get the timeline on when the projects will be transmitted to you folks later today.
Are you just asking that?
Because I thought it says the governor shall request it's supposed to be in the budget.
Mm-hmm. It is supposed to be in the budget, and we may need to send out budget GMs to reflect that. But in terms of the budget that we were able to put together and submit to you folks, our initial budget, it is the general amounts.
Where are they in their process?
Oh, where is the Green Fee Advisory Council? They've, I believe they're at the later stages of their process, and they are preparing to submit that list.
So they don't have any deadlines. They just give you when they give you.
I'm sure they have deadlines. I just don't know what they are offhand. I'd have to check with them.
Okay.
So how do you guys haven't had a list turned over to you from, the administration hasn't received a list from the Green Fee Advisory Council?
We did receive a list from the Green Fee Advisory Council.
When was that?
I would have to check, but I believe it was the initial list of everything that had come in versus the more curated list.
Are we talking about like months ago or like days ago?
I would have to check. Yeah, I would have to check.
December?
I think it was in December.
Okay, because in the law, the last line of that section says, well, the first part, as I said, the governor shall request, right? And it says in the budget or supplemental that amount. But it also says to be expended equally to advance specific projects.
Right.
So it's not supposed to be lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
The law requires specific projects to be in the budget bill.
Right. And we do plan to send you those specific projects. This was the first year of us getting the program up and running. In order to meet the deadlines to submit the budget, it was.
To what?
Yeah, thank you. I
It's not
appreciate
supposed
that.
to be these lump sums.
You're correct.
The law says specific project.
Right.
And the Green Fee Advisory Council had emailed saying that there is a webinar next week, Tuesday, January 27th, which will discuss funding recommendations for the 2026 legislative session. So recommendations on how to apply, recommendations on who they're looking at. What are those recommendations about?
I'd have to check with the Green Fee Advisory Council. I don't think we have those details.
Well,
Okay.
since we passed the bill, yeah, it's been almost about 8 months since
Yeah.
since we passed the bill. So when did you guys decide to work on this?
We worked on it shortly thereafter. There was a lot of setup in getting the right stakeholders involved and setting up the advisory council, generating the interest, going through the projects. So it has been worked on quite diligently, but it is something that is really cumbersome and something that took some time to start up.
Okay, sorry, I just want to finish my point. In that same email says, during the webinar, the council will share its funding recommendations, which were presented to Governor Green for his consideration and submission for the 2026 legislative session. The Hawaii State Legislature will make its final appropriations of the green fee funds. So this is very misleading unless the intent is to share its funding recommendation. So it sounds like you folks are just trucking along, and here we are trying to pick up the pieces and put this whole puzzle together. So I would strongly recommend that when communication like this is sent out, that you're in alignment with when the Senate asks you, what is this? The council will share its funding recommendations, which were presented to Governor Green for his consideration. That sounds to me like what will be shared is the funding recommendations, which the governor had already seen, which we had not seen yet. So what is that?
I would have to check, and I do agree with you that the timeline is really tight and we do need to coordinate a bit more on this, on this process. So thank you for that.
Okay, is there somebody in the room that can answer that? I mean, this is an email blast that had come out. Nobody in the room knows? Okay.
How hard is it to put us on the copy line? When you send stuff to the governor, when you send him the list, isn't that when we're supposed to get it at the same time?
Sorry, Senator, what?
She's asking,
what
why aren't
you're
we
asking?
copied when the committee transmitted to the governor
Mhm.
the list? Why
Mhm.
didn't they just copy the legislature?
Why aren't we copied, or why haven't you folks then send it out to us? Because it's, according to that, it's simultaneous, right? We get it, he gets it, and we get it.
Right, right. And that, I know that there's a tight timeline, so I understand that
I
suggestion.
got it to him.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to say legislature, members of
Mhm.
legislature, or president and speaker?
Mhm. Understood.
Don't give lame
Yeah.
excuses like that.
Okay, but the law does allow you the revenue bond component, right?
Sorry?
The law. Yeah, it says,
That's it.
including revenue bonds issued for the purposes of section 237D
Mhm.
dash 6.5.
Mhm.
So that was the new language last year, so
Mhm.
including revenue bond. And then it also says that the monies from the monies can be used to pay geo bonds under projects under section 237D-6.5, where the bonds are designated to be reimbursed from the special land and development fund. So the special fund can pay for these geo bond funds. I mean, the special fund can pay that.
I would need to check. I just need to circle back with our
I
deputy.
mean, I'm just
DG.
reading what the bill that we had last year.
Right, thank you.
And then the general fund would pay back the TAT, the green fees monies would end up going back into the,
General fund.
General fund. No, then to
The
the special fund to pay off the bonds,
yeah.
yeah.
The other questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Separate subject. It's my understanding, I've been contacted that the approval for increased funding for the public defenders has been approved, but it's stuck somewhere. Is it stuck in your office?
Yeah, we can handle it. So just so everybody's on the same page with like the dates of how this all happened. Last year, Budget and Finance came with a request to increase in salary amounts for the public defenders. The legislature passed it as of July 1st. It was going to take several months to go through the process. Still, it has not gone through. A lot of that had to do with staffing crisis or staffing shortages. So our HR staffing
On your
shortage
side.
on our side, BNF, right?
Okay.
We are aware of that situation. We're taking responsibility for it. We've enrolled DHERD to work with us, and this is the number one priority for our department. We expect all of those pay adjustments to be in go through HR by the end of the month, and then it will take it'll probably take a payroll cycle or two to actually hit the paychecks.
Okay, and the start date, is that when the July 1 or whatever it was, so this will be retroactive?
Yep. It will be retroactive. So there's two things. One is we have to make sure that they're being compensated at the new rate, so their new monthly rate. The other thing is we have to retroactively pay for the last 7 months that they haven't been paid. So those are two acts, but we're on top of both of them.
Okay, thank you. Can you follow up with my office so I'm sure that this is
Absolutely.
coming along? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I noticed on the vacancy table, you only have one position you have a expected fill date. The rest are all. So does that mean you're not planning on filling them?
No, that is our responsibility, and we just didn't have that information when we had to submit those tables.
Oh, okay. So do you have dates for all of these?
Expected fill dates? We do have information on what's under what's currently under recruitment and things like that. And we can share those with you.
Okay. And then I noticed, I'm not sure why the public defender looks like quite a bit of vacancies. Did they get their money for the pay differential yet?
Oh, we just had the discussion about that. It's expected in the next couple of weeks. I can invite the public defender up here if he wants to talk about vacancies.
Because are these, I guess what I want to find out, are these vacancies because you just got to wait for the pay differential to attract people, or?
Thank you. No, we're actually in the process of actively recruiting for most of those positions, and we do have, so there's that limited license waiver program, where out-of-state applicants can apply for, a limited license to work for government agencies. So that process, we have no specific timeline on. So we do have, for all the neighbor island positions, we do have applicants lined up, but we can't give a specific date because that's dependent on the National Conference of Bar Examiners passing them in terms of the background check, and then the judiciary clearing them and having them sworn in.
Okay, so you're gonna try fill these by when?
It should be before the end of this fiscal year. I mean, we have, so some of, I didn't specifically list, and so I gave the information to BNF, so mine is directly from me, so I take responsibility for that. I didn't give specific dates because it's dependent on the process I just went over with you, and also on when HR can process the application. So, but I would expect before the end of this year, fiscal year, I'm sorry.
Okay. Questions? Go ahead.
Different table.
Go ahead.
Table 7, please. Restrictions, you have 1, 2, 3 line items that say attorney's fees and witness fees are difficult to accurately predict and are paid when billed. These totals are costing about $500 million. So how do you justify these costs? What attorney firms are there? Are we not able to use our own AG? $500 million.
Yeah, these have to do with our debt service. So like the size of those debts that's related to our CIP budget, right? And then on top of that, there's loans, but we have attorney's fees that are rolled into that. And that's what's like, see, these are like pretty small amounts in the percentage differences. So that's what we're arguing about. We're not providing hundreds of millions of dollars and paying hundreds of millions of dollars in attorney's fees.
So it's legal fees to help you with CIP costs.
Right, bond services, bond sales, things of that nature.
On table 22, I noticed for the telework process to evaluate the job performance, you have your program developed a weekly productivity tracker to monitor employees' work activity for all of them. Yeah, can you give us a copy of each of the trackers for each of the employees?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Table 21. Positions that are being paid higher than the salaries authorized as of November 30th, 2025. So everyone is over. Is this like, I guess I'm trying to understand how the increase is above what's budgeted. And also when the position goes vacant, the person coming in automatically gets the higher last paid or should be paid the budgeted amount? Because these are all over the budgeted amount, right?
Yeah, this is for ERS, so I think I would defer to
Albert.
Albert on that one.
When someone comes into a new position, they don't get what the last person was making. They have a range, and then it's up to the negotiations based off of their qualifications on where they place on that range.
So when it says actual salary last paid, I'm to assume that the last person was getting paid that amount over and above, but when somebody else comes in new, they're getting that same last paid amount?
No,
No.
they wouldn't be entitled or be expecting to receive that last paid salary. So when someone comes in new, the salary is reset based on that specific person's qualifications.
So did it get reset for the recent additions to staff? Like budget and finance, or like ERS director, or did it get reset?
Yes, it was reset for the ERS director.
But then why isn't it at the budgeted amount? Why is it higher than the budgeted amount?
This was as of November 30, so the new ERS director started after that date. And so next, yeah, so
we
it
don't see what that salary is now.
correct. Yeah, we can send that information
Can
to you, but
send
that's
us-
not on the
send us
table.
Information.
Sure.
I would also like to mention that the line item that Senator Kim is referring to, also I was comparing it to work-related travel, the retirement system executive director. I was comparing it to the work-related travel, and it seems that that position that was making an apparent $426,000 a year also took 4 trips totaling $14,000 for one position.
Mhm.
So
That's correct.
can you explain that?
I mean, these people manage $16 billion for our pensions, and we want to, it's pretty normal for people to go and attend conferences, especially the head of our pension system, to go to the mainland. And, I think this is definitely within the standard operating procedures of the director of the ERS public.
Yeah, $14,000 for 4 trips sounds pretty excessive to me.
Mhm.
And so, what results came out of that trip?
We can get that information to you. Thank you.
So much.
So I know in the airports, and I'm not familiar with this, but it does say that when meetings can be held or conference or whatever information, that as much as possible, it be try to be done either in state or by video
So-
and so forth. So is that something that's embedded in your folks' travel policies? Not necessarily ERS, but just as a whole and.
In general, if there are ways to, travel virtually or to attend something virtually, we do, but that's not part of our policies. By and large, we don't travel too much as a department. When we do, it's for very specific, very, very specific
But should they do it?
transactions.
All the departments, I mean, that, state government, we should try to be maximizing or minimizing the impact to the general fund and to the taxpayers.
I mean, my take on that is to apply a blanket policy to the entire state government could lead to unintended consequences, right? And so it's much better to, absolutely for travel. I do think that there are times when it is incredibly valuable for people to travel to the mainland,
Exactly.
to communicate with
Saying-
colleagues.
I'm saying that, shouldn't we have something that says, it should meet this criteria, that you're required to do it? One, two, it's imperative that, so many people do. I mean, shouldn't there be some criteria, and or if it can be done electronically, then that should be the first criteria, because a lot of these conferences now have both tracks. You can do it virtually or you can go in person.
Correct.
Yeah, and we go to a lot because they pay for us to go. I don't pay it out of taxpayers' dollars, like, because they pay for it.
Mhm.
But they have virtual and they have but I know a lot of these other conferences for staff and stuff, we have to pay.
Well, it is one of the questions that we, as somebody who's been in state government who goes on these things, I can tell you, I've had to answer those questions and justify when I need to go to in person versus conference. So those types of policies, I'm not sure if there's an entire state policy for.
Justify every trip if I wanted to. There's always ways on how to justify going on a trip, so.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, that's one of the hard things about, like, you never know if the trip is going to be worth it until you take it, and there's always some types of risks, right?
If you have a virtual, that you're getting the same information, because,
Yeah.
We sit there and look at the same slides and hear the same speaker in person or.
Well, like, this is where it really comes down to differences, because I've definitely had the case where the most important interactions I get from a conference are from outside the presentation, like facilitating, like networking, and where we are like brainstorming a problem. So again, I think that's totally legitimate. We don't want to be sending tons and tons of people on these kind of whatever conference. On the other hand, we have to recognize that being with other people and having discussions is one of the most valuable things a person can do.
But, I go on these a lot, and I know a lot of people skip. They skip the meetings, they go on, they do social things, especially if you have more than 3 or 4 from the state. Oftentimes they don't attend the dinner with the speaker. They go out on their own. So, in reality, there's a lot of that going on. And I'm not saying, every single one people are doing that, because I certainly make it a point. If somebody's paying for me to be there, I'm going to be there. But I come on, you can justify anything, but there's a lot of that going on.
Definitely.
Let me go back to, so when you pay above the budgeted amount on these salaries, who makes that determination?
That's the hiring commission, and they're with
Hiring commission, who's?
whoever's like making the offer, right? And so they work with the HR, and the HR determines the range in which you can make the offer.
Okay, so in the case of the ERS, who determined all of this? HR determined that they could be paid higher than the budgeted amount?
It would have, for ERS, it would have been the board.
The board made the determination, so not. And then where does that additional dollars come from?
It came out of the ERS.
It came out of the vacant positions, or just?
Most likely, it probably came out of turnover savings or other personal services costs that they
'Cause
had.
that's what happens
Right.
when you guys give raises within the department that's over the budgeted amount. It comes out of some position that you're not gonna fill, right?
Yeah, I would have to,
But then you don't have the money for the fill date. So, but then when you give us these vacancy reports and you say fill date, we know for sure it's not gonna get filled because you used some of that money out,
right.
right?
Yeah, so I would have to circle back with the ERS to know specifically where they took the funds. They could have just taken it from the ERS account, not from a specific
But in
vacancy.
your case for vacancies, can you tell us which ones are gonna stay vacant because you guys use the money for something else?
I can answer that for being like BPPM and FAD. My goal is to have everything fully staffed up.
Yeah, but how are you gonna fully staff it if you know more the funds you used it?
We are not that's not something that is common practice at
So
BNF.
you're saying you've never used vacancy savings?
I never say never in front of,
Okay, because
but-
every department uses vacancy savings for something.
yeah.
So you folks would be an oddball if you're telling me you don't use vacancy
Yeah,
savings.
well, I guess what I'm trying to communicate is, like, one of the first things I've come to appreciate is the fragility of being that staffing presents to the operations. And it is high on my list to really focus and fill vacancies and bring people on and fill these positions.
So, I have a question. So let's say right now, the budget amount is 395.16. Yeah. How long do the person stays in that position before they start making 426 and above the amount they're making? Reason why I say is because some departments, you come in at that price and they're not even so much months into position, they get on pay raise. So what is the time limit of working on the amount budget for 395? How long they have to stay in that position before they make 426?
Discretionary.
Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry about this. The ERS is slightly different because they have a board and they make different announcements. Well, I'm happy to work with you and deliver that information with you on like how they do that, but that's slightly outside of most other civil service
It
positions.
depends on who the hiring authority is. So in this case, it's the ERS board that hires the ERS staff.
And like in UH.
They don't report to the,
President decides who he wants to give raises from.
Yeah.
Because 1 year there's two
It
raises.
varies. It just depends on the position. But I wanted to, so if Rod is taking Neil's job, who's taking Rod's job?
He's acting, so
So
he's
doing both.
He's doing both. Right now, his permanent position.
So what's the plan?
The plan is to fill the BPPM administrator job.
Okay, so Rod's going back to his old job.
Yes.
Or staying, he's keeping.
Yeah, he's keeping, which is really important.
No, yeah, I know. That part is kind of.
So even like the positions over here, what Kim was saying, you get plenty over here, assistant 3 like that, all 37,000. And it doesn't seem like you're gonna be in any urgencies to fill the position. So is these one of the positions that we've been talking about that you guys use them to divert, pushing some other pay salaries? Did you guys
Well, can you guys go back and tell us if you have the money for all the positions if they were filled today?
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, we can follow up.
Yeah.
And then what I noticed, it's in the telework table, but if you look at some of your program budget analysts, the budgeted amount is 74,000, or the second one is 93,000, but this is opposite. They're only getting 68,000, because I thought we had actually given pay differential for some of the program analysts. So they never got the pay differential.
So that's the actual salary last paid is, that's the range. So we didn't list the specific salary, but we can give you the actual salaries
No,
last
you
paid.
do have it.
Budgeted amount.
It's page table 22. It says budgeted amount and it says actual salary last paid. So you actually have what you pay them.
Oh,
You're paying less than what is
What is
budgeted. It's
budgeted.
the opposite.
right,
But I
right.
thought you guys had asked for pay differential to retain a lot of these, but then you didn't even spend the money to retain So should we, if you're not going to use it, then we can take it back.
We are using that pay differential to actually redescribe a lot of our analysts from 5 to 6s. So we're in the process of doing that, but that's not reflected
Okay,
here.
but I just hope that the pay differential is not used for something else.
No, it's not.
Because
It's
okay,
absolutely
so
not.
when is the timeline for that so we can see it?
For the redescription.
Yeah, so that we can actually see that the money's being spent for what you guys had asked for.
Right. So we're working on the redescription
Yeah,
currently.
what's the time?
The timeline, if I had to put my best guess, would probably be towards the fall is when we would actually be able to finish redescribing the positions to go from 5
Okay,
to
so
6.
for the current, so what did you do with the money for the current fiscal year?
We haven't spent it. So we aren't using it towards anything else.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's part of the lapse amount, or do we have to?
It's part of our lapses, our BNF lapses.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, we're gonna recess for the governor's office. Okay, now we saved well, it's not necessarily that. Last but not least, we have one more hearing with the mayors, but save the best for last.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Good to see everyone. Will Kane,
Who's
Senior
been
Advisor.
dying to talk.
I'm dying to talk, yes.
So now you can say what you've been.
Yes.
Now he can't. Now he's like in
Okay.
shock. In shock after wanting to.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So you have our testimony, but first, thank you. The Office of the Governor in this case only has one budget request. This is a statutory budget request related to gubernatorial transition costs that we are required to request during an election year to provide the long-term stability and essential services and critical programs from the Office of the Governor.
What happens if you don't use the money?
If we don't use the money, it would revert back to the general fund.
Because you're hoping that there's not going to be a.
Yes, we are hoping. We're hoping that the voters will bring Governor back, but yes.
So if there's no transition, then the money's not going to be used for anything.
No, the money would be returned back. General fund.
That's it?
That's all. We try to keep it easy. And before I forget, I'm so sorry.
I thought you had other stuff you wanted to.
Well, I wanted to introduce my team,
Oh.
if I could. So the policy team. So on the far right, we have Tori Nakata, and we have Angie Chapman, and then Rika Kanashige, and the guy hiding behind me, Dan Kochi, and Governor Senior Special Advisor Julian Juarez. Yes, he's been around a few places. I don't know, kind of a random guy. I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have.
No, I thought you wanted to say something.
I think I was going to talk during the previous one, but
go ahead.
So no, I think I just wanted to clarify a couple things on the green fee. I know it's complicated and it's tricky, and probably I should, let others, but so I think there's some misunderstanding what we've been trying to get out there as far as the function of the green fee. So just to be clear, that we had originally proposed a process that would include grant making and something that would semi-mirror the 42F process, but that doesn't exist in the law. So there is no method for a direct appropriation or, whatever that looks like to an outside entity. It has to go through state agencies.
So this has nothing to do with golf.
This has nothing to do with golf.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Golf.
Oh, golf.
Like
Oh,
green
golf.
fee.
Yes. We should talk about golf. No.
I was wondering.
So they're working through the process. We are very mindful, having worked in this arena with you folks, of the timeline, making sure that the House and the Senate, of course, has time to go through a vetted list. And we anticipate transmitting that to you as a GM as part of our budget request next week, so that you folks could do it.
Get the list as it's.
So the list, so let me address that. It's a good question. So the list that was sent to the governor, so the governor set up this, it's a advisory council to the governor, right? It wasn't set up statutorily. It's not part of the bill. And so as part of that process, the governor.
No, you were just talking about what's on the website.
Yeah, no, I'm getting there. Sorry. So the council is transmitting, or has already transmitted their recommended list to the governor. That will be shared on the 27th. So that's the one that you're asking.
But the website says that when he gets the list, we get the list.
No, so
Can you read that again?
It's shared.
Okay, let me just skip down. The council will share its funding recommendations, which were presented to Governor Green for his consideration and submission for the 2026 legislative session. The Hawaii State Legislature will make the final appropriations of the green fee funds.
That's right.
It doesn't say they submitted at the same time.
No.
No.
So the list is from the Green Fee Advisory Council, advisory to the governor, so then he can make his decisions, working with the departments, working those things to create a proposal GM for the
So
legislature.
they don't follow sunshine law.
They don't follow sunshine because they're not a statutorily created body. They're just an advisory committee the governor put together as part of this process, because to Senator Favela's point, the community, there's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have as many people involved.
So OIP said that that's accurate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Even though they're making funding recommendations.
So they're making funding recommendations, but they're making project recommendations as well. So they're just making recommendations to the governor. only.
It's very misleading.
Then the governor.
Okay.
Well, we could work on the language, but I'm sorry, I'm trying to explain the process. So
Yeah.
if we follow the law says that the executive branch has to submit a budget request that is equal to, in the budget bill, which is where we have a lump sum already, and we are backfilling the information with a governor's message, which is
Yeah.
relatively common. And then everyone will see at that time. So what we want to show the public is what the Green Fee Advisory Council originally recommended to the governor. And then everyone will see in the GM, all the detailed list of projects we're proposing for consideration by the legislature.
Yeah, I think just the language just needs to be
Okay, I'll look at
synonymous.
it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of discrepancy. So it's confusing, but if you could just clean that up, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
So there is a vetting so that not everything that the advisory council gives to you is going to be coming to us.
No.
So
So there was, yes, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
It almost as though he wants to say, hell no. He's like, no, no.
When the
So he
Green Fee
must-
Council
he
comes
must-
up and they can explain, they might have their own opinions
But
about
it
working with
sounds
me.
like he's betting it.
For sure. We are doing a vetting. We received over 600 public proposals. So I think Senator Hashimoto had asked earlier about that. Those are just people saying, here's projects from organizations and individuals that we think should be included in this. What we've tried to do is marry those up between departmental projects, some things that they can do, and things that can be done in this first year.
So you're really looking at state needs, not where.
So we're
Almost
looking
like the GIA process where people are looking at it from their specific organization's needs.
Right, and
Okay.
we can't look at it from that GIA process. We have to look at it from the state side until there's
Okay, no, that's good because when she mentioned that it's really communities can apply, then
right.
community needs may slightly differ from statewide needs.
Sure. And I think
department
where
needs.
maybe, the deputy was talking about is that, so there are existing programs in some of the departments, like DLNR, for example, that have a grant program for certain things. And I don't remember what it was, but it's
Like conservation.
like conservation, right? So they already have an existing grant program. If the legislature decided, hey, we're going to appropriate, $10 million into this
Fund.
program,
Yeah.
then they could go out and do that and just the normal process and the vetting and all they do. But if not, then everything has to go through this State Department. And right now we're looking at a variety of departments, DOE, DLNR, Defense,
Yeah.
DOT.
Yeah, just whatever complies
the-
with those three.
And-
Whoever applied, I mean, the
Oh.
agencies.
So
Yeah.
the agency,
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
then mixing in the community though, because there's a lot of crossover. So there's crossover in requests from state and the community. And then also the Green Fee Council really came up with a great, and they'll be able to explain it, and we'll be able to explain it better. But a criteria in order to put these into the buckets that were required, because as Senator Kim mentioned earlier, there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
So it won't be exactly perfect, but I think they did a really, really good job over like 4 months getting to that point. And then I think we're going to be looking to refine it with you folks during the session. And
So, but the community needs have to match a statewide project though, right? Because it cannot be like a GIA where they're looking at from a community project.
right,
Because we have to spend state dollars on state property.
correct. Yeah, so all of that criteria still has to exist. Now, there may be
So
projects.
that's
that-
where
So can
when the committee sent you a list, that you had to reconcile that.
Correct.
Because
And
it
that's
sounds
what-
like they may not have given you a list that follows that
They
specific.
did
criteria.
really well. There's just, I mean, we've been doing this a long time, so I think they did pretty well. And we tried to guide them in that process, but there were some things that were
Not state projects.
not state projects or couldn't be done by the state. Like there was a couple, not to give away, but that were actually like federal projects.
Yeah.
And related to Hawaii, but federal. And so we said, we can't do federal projects,
Yeah.
right? So those sort of
So
things.
they're not individual project, nonprofit project.
Oh, no, there's no nonprofit.
Yeah, just.
But it'll
project.
say like, I'm just making this up, but I'm trying to remember one off the top of my head, but sand restoration at this place or,
Specific.
but it doesn't
nonprofit
say
do it.
done by Will Kane Enterprises or something, none of that exists. It's all like DLNR or DBED or.
So the only reason why I brought that up, and I'll just give the name, I was talking to Senator Kim, geeky balls, or whatever, all those balls you throw in the water.
Yep.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because the guys that was giving the presentation at my school was very excited about the green fees. I guess the Friends of Hawaii or whatever, and they was talking about that, and I said, because I had a problem with the green fee, right? They said, oh, no, Senator, it's good, because we get to apply for our grants. So is that part of what you're
So
talking
no,
about?
so I think there's a misunderstanding, and
Okay.
we had multiple webinars to try to explain that this is you're putting in a request as to the council for consideration,
Yes.
but there is no application process. So there won't be where, like GIAs are listed out.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. It's just when the budget is passed, DLNR will have this, defense will have this.
The DLNR apply to them for something.
If that process exists for there, and it may not. Right now, we don't have a mechanism to do that, right? So it's tricky.
Okay, I just want to give you an opportunity to update the committee since it's risen to your level on stadium.
Okay. So I think what we're right now, Governor, of course, wants to make sure that things are moving quickly. We use the funds well.
So you've personally stepped in.
Yeah, so I've been working on it with parts of the team.
Yeah.
And so what we're looking at doing is we're
The point
multiple
of the
things, right?
spear and all of that.
So tip of the spear. So the first thing is creating a special project position using existing funding and DAGs. And we may need some down the line, but just to get going. And that person would be recruited, that would have a very broad knowledge of how to, do stadium construction and those sort of things. So someone that's an expert in these areas. And that person would be, at least for the time being or through the time of construction, housed in the office of the governor. At the same time, in the budget request for DAGs, we have a special project, special project.
Yeah.
Special project group. There we go.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is for that group specifically to focus on large scale capital projects across the state. So in this case, we have the stadium first. There may be other OCCC, whatever that looks like, right? And then that would support that person, that'd be part of the team. At the same time, the stadium authority is restructuring a bit and redescribing the positions in the stadium authority. So they recently made a hire for the deputy executive director, Mike Yadao, and then they are redescribing the position of the ED. So then the ED would be focused on assisting also with the construction and then beyond with the implementation there. So all that to say, we would have a dedicated team for the largest public works project.
No, it is vacant now, so that's why
It's
it's
vacant now.
vacant, so they can redescribe it.
Right.
How long has it been vacant?
December 31st.
Yeah, not even a month.
Not even a month.
Yeah.
Wasn't that, was that Sadiasu?
Yeah.
That was Sadios. So actually, he was deputy, he was acting ED.
Oh.
And then they didn't backfill the deputy. We filled the deputy and they're redescribing the executive. So it's been vacant now. Like 20 days. So, and all that, we are moving as quickly as possible. So,
But the special projects team is really so that the consultants are no longer the point of the spear as well, right? And managing
Correct.
contractors.
correct. This is the state project, state funding. We need to have complete, I mean, of course, they play a very important role, but that tip of the spear and the special projects need to oversee that
The
and make
contracts.
all those decisions and then implement those through the contractors or consultants.
The governor intervening with the mayor to be able to get city to give us an idea on about sewer and water and number of units we could possibly build at offsite. That was came up as two.
Yeah.
In our stadium meeting.
Sure.
That was one of the hangups in determining how long.
The capacity for the sewer and water in the area. Okay, I don't.
Yeah, because
can
we were
follow
kind
up.
of surprised that wasn't even part of the RFP, because then you don't know how much you're building.
Right. And I know
You
there's
don't
been
know the
discussions
sewer
between
capacity.
very different numbers between.
Yeah, the 4 and whatever.
Say, oh, the city hasn't told us, city hasn't told us, we can't just wait for the city to tell you, we have to go in and find out. what
Yeah.
The capacity and then within the
Yeah.
capacity, we decide how many units we want.
Let me follow up with the city, Senator. Let me see if we can get some answers. No, yeah.
And the whole point of
It's a good
HCDA
question.
getting more involved, because we need the CFD.
I was
Right.
just going to ask the question. I'm
Well,
glad you
because if
bring
not,
it
how
up.
do you pay for the
Yeah, so
infrastructure? They're not
HCDA is
getting any
definitely
money.
part of this process.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Make sure that they're
So
part of the
you're
discussion.
personally trying to coordinate all of that right now. in
I
the
am
moment.
personally trying to coordinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
This HCDA was just a consultant, but they should be.
Right.
part
So
of
they're
it.
No,
going to
there
be
is a
definitely a part of
district,
it. HHFDC.
That's the TOD districts.
Right.
And that's a TOD.
That's a TOD.
HCDA has oversight of that,
Right.
and then the CFD is for TOD district.
Right.
That's a TOD
And I think
district.
there's just been some confusion about responsibilities and who has what. And so I think we're getting that clear. I've been working with DBED, when working with DAGs. Everyone's on board. Everyone's on board to try to fix whatever inconsistencies that may have happened, but I think we're getting there. So I'm hoping to have something very soon. Or hoping actually to put out the announcement for the what do you call that, recruitment and all those things soon. So we're going as fast as the government can move.
So who puts out the RFP, HCDA or the Stadium Authority?
No, I think they still have to reconcile some
Yeah.
of that because the district part is not, HCDA has to take a more active role
That's
still.
right.
And then, so anyway, I think, sounds like he's working on it.
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there.
When do you think you can give us a
Oh,
proper
absolutely.
summary?
Yeah. As soon as I
No,
have more
when?
definitive
Like a
answers,
Couple weeks?
at least if a few weeks, if we can do a few weeks.
Okay,
Yeah. I have that in green fee and some other things.
yeah, that's good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, adjourn.
Thank you.